the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Alex Phillips sitting in for the inimitable Julia Hartley-Brewer, who's cooling her heels, hopefully somewhere hot if she's got any sense, because the summer seems to have packed its bags and gone away for the time being. Let's hope it does return. Or perhaps let's not, because there's a significant amount of concern now that not only might it get hot outside, we might get hot under the collar again, and we could have ahead of us a summer of rioting. At least those were the discussions around the cabinet table. I'd heard whisper of this yesterday. I alluded to it on the show yesterday. Now it is known, it is in black and white. The cabinets have indeed met and sat down and discussed the disintegration of society, needing to repair the social fabric or repeat a summer of riots. We're going to be talking about that and other big stories in the news today. Of course, there has been the death overnight of Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne at the age of 76. We're going to be discussing that one as well. Quite what he brought to the music and showbiz world. And there's a lot to discuss in politics, as well as poor old Harry and Meghan. Apparently, they've lost their Netflix contract. How long before they come knocking on our door wanting to sit in this seat? No, you stay where you are. What's going on over in Ukraine? Well, things aren't as happy over there as when it comes to Zelensky, as we're often told. There have been protests against him basically stripping powers from anti-corruption organisations and putting his buddies in charge of it all. Really? What are you up to, mate? The public aren't a fan. And the doctors' strikes, reckless NHS doctors are going to strike for 5 days, which is going to throw the NHS back into chaos. And Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, how matey were they? How close were they really? That MAGA lot have been crying out for those files. In fact, Donald Trump made it a central pillar of his campaign, didn't he? I'm going to get all the Epstein FBI files published. Everyone's going to know who his client list was. And all of a sudden, they're nowhere to be seen. And into that vacuum has filled a lot of accusations and conspiracy theories that perhaps the Donald himself, or maybe close associates or buddies of the Donald, would find it pretty embarrassing and awkward if all the information was laid bare. A lot to talk about today, and do throw in your 2-bit. 03444991000 is the number to dial. If you would like to have a chit-chat with me in the studio, you can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 8722 is the number. If you want to send a text message, you've got to write the word talk before you write out your message. Otherwise, there will be riots. Or will there? That's what we're going to be discussing with Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan, who joins me now. Hello there, Kev.
Morning, Alex.
Well, we've been discussing stuff like this, you and I, together for ages, haven't we? The disquiet bubbling under the surface, the fact that the British people are duly peeved at what's being done to their country. And it seems like the memo has finally reached the cabinet, or else someone in Whitehall has read Professor David Bett's report and preceded it for Angela Rayner to read out to her colleagues, because when I read those words, I thought she didn't write those herself. But, you know, they now talk a good game of needing to repair the social fabric, but I haven't heard a single murmur of how they want to do that.
Well, I think more to the point, I mean, whose fault is this? They're a year into their disastrous government, and they're sitting around the cabinet table yesterday going, oh, we've got a real societal problem. There's the fabric of society is collapsing. Well, whose fault is that? It's their fault. It's extraordinary. Yeah. It's extraordinary. And the events surrounding asylum seeker hotels, I was on air last night, and it was almost kind of unfolding before my very eyes that suddenly we hear that some of these asylum seekers have been moved out of the controversial Bell Hotel and into the £400 a night Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf, complete with sauna, swimming pool, restaurant and bars. And then a sort of spontaneous protest erupted outside that hotel. Meanwhile, back in Epping, we learn that the police were lying to us. when they said they didn't escort left-wing protesters into left-wing activists into the heart of the local community's protest. Not only did they escort them there, they drove them there. This is absolutely scandalous.
It's absolutely scandalous. It is shocking. And it just feels like we're back in the twilight zone, aren't we? You know, it feels like that post-Southport moment where the public are absolutely disgusted at the policies of not just this government, but successive governments. Our leaders are giving weak, mealy-mouthed lip service to our concerns. And all the while, they seem to be gaslighting us, tricking us, wanting to goad us, those people who are going out to protest, who want their voices to be heard to protect their local community, are being essentially goaded into, you know, a sort of riotous behaviour by these counter-protesters, being injected right into the heart of what was otherwise a peaceful campaign. So it all goes up and then it can be cracked down. And then yet again, we can live through that fear of being scared of what we think, scared of what we say, scared of how we react, because we're the problem, not the fact that this government and successive governments are committing acts of gross cultural vandalism on this nation. And they say the words integration. Oh, we need integration. We need community cohesion. How? How? Because I can't imagine anybody in that blimmin' cabinet room saying things like, well, how about we ban the burqa? How about we stop using translators and make everyone learn English? They're not going to come up with those policies, are they? They're going to say, oh, we need money to build a youth centre. We need to have special liaison officers with community leaders. They're not going to actually say, do you know what? We're going to protect, advance and promote British values and make sure everybody else coming to this country adheres to them.
Exactly right. I mean, did they discuss the asylum seeker hotel crisis? Because that's what it is now. They can't keep letting people into this country and then billeting them in, at the moment, we think 202 hotels, only 70 of which, by the way, the Home Office allowed us to know about. Local communities were not told that their local hotel was going to be turned into a migrant centre. There are 70 of them we're allowed to know about. More than 130 we aren't allowed to know about. It's extraordinary. If they don't get to grips with this, then all hell is going to break loose. And what did we learn from Epping? What we suspected last year. Okay, no one is complaining that the police dealt with those rioters in Southport and around the country with a certain amount of force. Those riots needed to be quelled. But what did we suspect when we saw that? We suspected that the police have really got a downer on what you might call patriots, right-wing protesters, people who just say, we don't want all these foreigners in our community, that the police have got a downer on them. So they came down on them like a ton of bricks. What do we find out in Essex? What we always suspected, that while they don't like the right, they love the left. I've seen these pro-Palestine marches. Not only are our police institutionally left-wing, they are also institutionally pro-Palestine. They're against Israel supporters and for the pro-Palestine people. And what happened in Epping is a scandal. And the chief constable of Epping, his name is Ben Julian Harrington, he has to go. He has to go. He is the guy, by the way, who sent 2 coppers to our friend and colleague, Alison Pearson, the Telegraph columnist, Remembrance Sunday morning to quiz her about a problematical tweet, totally harmless tweet, by the way, that she posted a year ago. That's Ben Julian Harrington. And now his people are admitting that they drove left-wing activists into the middle of that protest, the local community protest, outside an asylum seeker hotel. Mr. Harrington, you have to go. You have to go. This is a disgrace.
Oh, I agree. I think he needs to be held accountable. Where's he explaining himself this morning? That's what I want to know. But also we've learned today that they've come up with this brilliant way of helping Deliveroo and Uber Eats not to employ people on the black market. I'm sorry, why they've been doing that from the beginning, beggars belief. They should have been dragged in front of a select committee, made to explain themselves, or been told, you cannot operate in this country anymore, thank you very much. But apparently they're sharing information, special, private, confidential information about these hotel addresses, so Deliveroo can say, oh, by the way, do you live in one of these hotels? Oh, sorry, you can't work for us. They're not doing that. I had an item delivered the other day. It was supposed to be someone called Gabrielle Gabriella delivering it. It was a hulking great 6'5" man with a beard the size of blimmin' Captain Birdseye. I was like, you ain't Gabriella, are you? I mean, blimmin' heck. And yet, what really disgusts me, right? We know now we're getting hints of information about the number of people who are living in those hotels who are committing serious crimes, not just little things like moonlighting on the black market, but serious crimes, rape, assault, affray. And yet, there they are, earning money on the black market, being put up in four-star homes. This is what's annoying the British people. And I don't understand, when you go near one of those migrant hotels, you've got all these security guards standing at the door so members of the general public can't come in. You can't see that we've got barber shops and we've laid out a full board spread of 20 different cuisines in the kitchen, and there's somebody in there taking a yoga class right now. You're not allowed to see that, member of the public, even though you're paying for it. And yet they can't seem to stop these people coming out the hotel, getting on a Deliveroo bike, earning 40 quid, taking it home, or making OnlyFans videos. I'm sorry, why are their rooms not being searched? Why are their assets not being seized? They are being put up at our expense, and yet they get to live the life of Riley, and we're not allowed to see what's going on. That's why we're annoyed.
Their rooms are being searched, and then nothing happens. I had a guy on my show last night, name of Luke Sharman. He worked in 2 asylum centre seeker hotels in Norfolk for 2 years. He said rooms are regularly searched. They find stuff. They find knives kept underneath people's pillows. They find huge stashes of cocaine to the extent that they suspected people were dealing, and nothing ever happened. And do you know what happens when the asylum seekers turn up for the first time at their new home, the lovely shiny hotel that yesterday was full of normal residents, but is now suddenly miraculously turned into this darkened, tarpaulin-covered asylum seeker centre? Do you know the first thing that happens to them? It's a tricky thing. They have a terrible dilemma and choice to make as soon as they arrive in their asylum seeker hotel. They are offered, which would you like? Would you like an iPhone or would you like a Samsung? They have to make that choice.
Why are these people getting anything? They live in bin-bag bivouacs in the sand dunes of France, and we're rolling out the red carpet, and there are single mothers who might have had abusive husbands, nowhere else to go, waiting for a house so they can look after their babbies, and we're like, oh, sorry, you're going to have to give it 2 years at least, because old Mohammed, who's broken into the country with his machete, who's working on the black market, he deserves to go and have that place instead. I mean, this is why the public are angry. The Labour Party can bang on all they like about the need to repair social fabric. No, you've got to stop this, and you've got to stop it now. Break the glass that says emergency powers, like the government did in COVID, like you know you can do, and get this dealt with immediately, or then you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself who is responsible for riots that might be coming.
Absolutely. We do have a huge social fabric problem, and it is decaying badly due to all of the crises that this hopeless government has plunged this nation into. But if you want the cure-all, stop the asylum centre crisis, stop the migrant crisis. People do not take kindly to suddenly having hundreds of unemployed young sexually active men plunged into the middle of their community. And as you quite rightly say, this is why fury is mounting. Both the Sun newspaper and the Mail on Sunday have done huge investigations over the past year. These asylum seekers have committed hundreds and hundreds of alleged serious crimes. Most of them have just been charged. They're waiting to go to court. When they start going to court, all hell's going to break loose. And it's not just serious crimes. The real tinderbox problem here is that a significant number of these crimes are sexual, rape, sexual assault. That's what happened in Epping, that a man, an Ethiopian, within 2 days of arriving, was charged with 3 sexual assaults in 2 days on local women. He denies those charges, but he's in custody now. Now, when local communities find things out like this, they erupt, and you can't blame them. And the government's going on about, we've got a social fabric problem. No. You've got a migrant crisis that if you solved it, your social fabric problem would dissipate.
Exactly. It'd go a long way. And yet, dithering, blithering, useless, feckless, proselytising, pompous David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, who I've never seen anyone less credible for that position than him, went over to Syria to give that guy who used to be in Al-Qaeda, who shaved his beard, put on a suit and pretends to be nice all of a sudden, hundreds of thousands of pounds of our money, given him loads of cash money to, I don't know, whatever it's supposed to be doing in Syria, apart from slaughtering Druze people. And yet we can't come out of a returns agreement. So hold on, if this country is good enough to give our money to, it's good enough to send people back to. And this Donald Trump would say no more foreign aid for you unless all of these people go back to your country right now. And what are we doing? Oh, would you like some foreign aid? Yeah, go on then, have a bit of this. This is lovely. Oh, don't worry, we're going to look after them in a hotel. We don't know what to do, the ECHR. How come the ECHR and human rights didn't come into it when we were all locked in our houses? I'm sure that impinged upon my personal liberties. I'm sure that when it comes to the ECHR would be frowned upon. But during COVID, that was fine. They could somehow pull magical levers and give themselves powers to treat us rubbishly. And yet with these people, nothing's good enough for them.
I've missed sitting next to you. This brings it all back. But have you noticed David Lammy? Everywhere he goes, every country he goes, he gives them a load of money. Millions, hundreds of thousands. Everywhere he goes, he gives them more of our money. What is the point of this guy? He is now busy virtue signaling about Gaza and Israel as if anything he says or thinks will make a blind bit of difference. Oh, we've joined 24 other countries to condemn the restriction of aid to the Gazan people. Oh, great, great. What does that do for me? What does that do for you, Alex? What does that do for the people around the country? Absolutely nothing. This country is in trouble because this government is obsessed with itself. These cabinet ministers are obsessed with their own virtue and polishing their damn halos, and to hell with this nation, this once great nation that they are busy ruining. To go back to our original point, just think about it. It is breathtaking. These abject idiots sitting around the cabinet table yesterday going, oh, we've got a bit of a social fabric problem. Oh, we've got a societal problem. At no point, I guarantee you in that discussion yesterday in the cabinet room, now full of morons, at no point I bet they blamed themselves. Did they blame themselves? I bet they didn't.
In fact,
it's their fault.
Exactly, no, but this is it. This is how audacious the statement is, which clearly Big Ange has not written herself. This has been written by some Whitehall wonk and she's read it out. The Deputy Prime Minister said that economic insecurity, oh, take notes, Rachel Reeves, the rapid pace of deindustrialisation, oh, take notes, Ed Miliband, immigration, oh, take notes, Yvette Cooper, and the impacts of local communities and public services, technological change and the amount of time people are spending alone online, and get this, and declining trust in institutions like you, like our own government, who lied to us over Southport, was having a profound impact on society. Everything in that list that is being held up as the reason why our social fabric is fraying is the direct responsibility of the dreadful policies this government is making.
Well, those are their policies, the deindustrialization. Those are their policies. So they're going, oh, look, here's a list of our policies that are causing societal decay.
Yes.
I mean, why don't you stop those policies? Why don't you do something that's good for this country? Honestly, Alex, you can't get your head around what's going on. This government and this Prime Minister are catastrophic, and they can't look into the mirror and see where the problem is, because it's them.
Yeah.
It is them. And we are in big trouble now. And as you said earlier, I think, I don't take any relish in this, but I think there will be a serious summer of discontent ahead, because the sort of touch paper has been lit and communities all over the country are going, hey, let's do what Epping did.
Yeah.
It looks as if the people of Epping may have succeeded in clearing out the Bell Hotel. Now foisted upon the poor people of Canary Wharf. But if it gets through, the message gets through that those protesters, the decent people who protested in Epping, were successful in clearing out their local asylum seeker hotels. What do you think other communities?
Exactly.
exactly the same.
Oh, it's not long before Sir Keir Starmer presses the far-right thugs button, is it? That's going to be his recourse. You just know it.
Well, the problems in Epping were caused by far-left thugs.
Exactly.
You're right. He's dusting down his rhetoric. Far-right thugs, these aren't protests, and so on and so forth. As long as this government and our Prime Minister continue to delude themselves about the causes of these problems, these problems will get worse and worse and worse. We need some honesty on the part of Keir Starmer to actually admit that he's been going wrong, this government's been going wrong, and this country is in massive trouble. But the biggest crisis issue is the migrant crisis, about which he is doing nothing.
Nothing.
I said it last week. He will never get a single migrant over to France due to his fabulous swap of foreigners scheme with Macron.
No,
Not
it's ridiculous.
a single migrant.
Well, even if he does, we get one in exchange, so it doesn't change anything, does it?
Exactly.
Ridiculous. Kev, before I let you go, Ozzy Osbourne, he's no longer with us. Thoughts on him?
Well, absolute legend, an extraordinary man who went from being the wild man of rock. By the way, I don't believe he actually ever bit the heads off birds. I think he was an enthusiastic curator of his own hell-raising legend, but he was a lovely guy. I met him a few times, and he went from being the hellraiser of rock, a very powerful figure, major figure in the field of heavy metal, to being a much-loved reality TV star. You know Sharon well, as I do. Feel very sorry for Sharon and the kids. She'll be devastated because he was a great family man as well. He had this image of being, a really terrifying, nasty, hell-raising rocker. He wasn't. He was a pussycat. He was a nice guy, and we've lost a major figure. We really have.
Yeah, love and thoughts to our Sharon today, because it must be utterly dreadful for her. So brilliant words there, Kevin. Always great to catch up with. I keep calling him my former TV husband. We're basically still at it, aren't we? No one separated Kevin Alex. That ain't going anywhere. We're the dream team. But if you want to be part of the dream team, this is the number to call: 0344 499 1000. You can then call that now, register your interest, speak to the lovely Alicia, and then you'll be patched through to the studio to let me know what you think about this disastrous government or whatever else we're talking about today. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number or leave me a voice note. 8722 is the number to send me a text message. Write the word talk before you text. I'm back after this.
It's nothing new. They did the same in Southport as well. I don't know why. It's a bit of Hegelian dialect, isn't it? Problem, reaction, solution. What they're trying to do is provoke a riot. And when they provoke a riot, they can come in heavy-handed and say, oh yeah, we're only coming in heavy-handed because there's been a riot. Do you get what I mean? They can send in their snatch squads then as well. So that's why they're doing it. And you'll see there in the video, there's about, 50 lefties brought down there to provoke a reaction and, give us bad optics.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but that's what they do.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello, welcome back. I hope you've managed to flatten down your hair after that big foghorn blast of anger from Kev and I. I feel very exercised today. Nothing sticks in my craw more than when you get this sort of thing, this stupid cabinet readout from Angela Rayner, which she clearly didn't write herself, because it's blaming basically the government policies for the lack of social integration. It is so profoundly audacious and gaslighting to read that out. It's just, it really upsets me when our politicians, we need to have better integration. You don't say we need better integration. I mean, really, you call us all far-right thugs and they go, oh, look, we've got a problem. It really angers me. Sean in Gloucester says the UK is stuck in some horrific Groundhog Day death loop. Keith Starlin and his incompetent cronies find new ways every blimmin' day to make things worse. If it's not the economy, it's immigration or lies or scandals. How on earth can they make such a mess of everything? How bad can it get before we boot them out? We need an election now. I'm beginning to think, actually, we're going to have to go to the IMF for a big charity check bailout soon, and that should be curtains to this useless cabinet, except I don't think it will be. Good morning, Alex, says Stuart. I wonder if the woke Essex police will rub off their rainbow stickers and their police cars and replace them with the far left Workers' Party and Labour Party stickers. Yes, disgusted about how Essex police lied brazenly in a press release saying we did not escort protesters from the station to outside the Bell Hotel. Categorically. And yet you did. Vile. OK, let's speak now to Michael, who is in Birmingham. Good morning, Michael.
If you think you're mad, I'm absolutely livid here. My blood pressure's going through the roof. There's lots. The curtain's been drawn back on these asylum hotels, you know, with the luxury accommodation. You know, people are breaking in and showing luxury accommodation, 5-star menus, delivery bikes, fashion, you know, being spent by these characters. Why don't we get some benefit out of it? Every local authority should go around, find the rough sleepers on their street, give them a card that entitles them to turn up at these hotels whenever they want, and they get a bed for the night and they get the benefit of these meals. Because how many people do you see saying homeless and hungry? And why can't British people get a bit of benefit out of it? And it means that these scammers have to sleep 3 to 4 to a room to accommodate the people. Why not? Who could argue against that?
Why are they even being given a hotel room when they live under bivouacs in France and in other countries? They're given a mattress on a concrete floor if they're so lucky. I'm not saying we should treat people inhumanely, but frankly, if the taxpayer is putting you up and putting food in your belly and you're going out and earning money on the side, that is our money. You give that right back, my friend. And yet, like I said, you've got security guards stationed at the entrance to this hotel so the general public can't see what goes on inside, despite the fact we're paying for it. They're able to lock us out from knowing what's happening, and yet all these people brazenly walk out, get on their delivery bikes, earn money. I mean, what? It is such an insult to this nation. It's an insult to our veterans. It's insult to struggling single mums who have no safe place to bring up their children. It's an insult to people who have battled some of the worst abuse in their childhoods, ended up on the streets with drugs problems, and we've turned our backs on them. It's an insult to every single taxpayer, every man and woman who works hard, sets an alarm, goes out, wants to try and build this country into something better. And instead, that money is being siphoned off to give to people from the developing world who don't care about this country, they don't care about our customs, our culture, our history, our heritage, nothing. They just want to come and parasitically use it as somewhere for a cheap one-year holiday with full board accommodation, work on the black market, send that money back home. And it disgusts me, and it disgusts so many people in Britain, and I am sure there are wonderful people among the cohort of those coming over on boats. I'm sure that there are very desperate people. I'm sure there are genuine asylum seekers. I'm sure there are economic migrants who actually do dream of being part of Britain and contributing to Britain. I'm not painting everyone with the same brush, but we know there's a significant subset of those people who, quite frankly, are taking the mick brazenly, and they're behaving criminally, and we've had enough. We've had enough. Oh, let's speak to Steve now in Hertfordshire. Let's see if he can calm me down. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. I very much doubt I'll calm you down. It probably makes you just as mad as I'm thinking. All these immigrants have had really nice hotels. Epping's a nice place to live. and now they've been upgraded to central London, a very nice place, even better. So what's the government going to do next? Are they going to say, don't worry about coming across on the boats, we give you a first-class airline ticket to save all the hassle, you can go straight into the Docklands. Don't worry about it, and you can have all your benefits.
Yeah. Oh, and TfL's going to give you a free Oyster card because Sadiq Khan thinks you're lovely as well. So go about and enjoy all the things in London that tourists pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to come and do. You know, I enjoy going and seeing the sights. Why don't you get on the Uber boat, go up and down the river? I mean, it's just... I just cannot fathom the madness of this situation. And this is where most people in the country are. It makes no sense that we're not even looking after our own, but leaning heavily on the average man and woman who's struggling right now, while allowing ne'er-do-wells to come in and live the life of luxury.
Yeah, the thing is, why can't they find some old dilapidated hotel in the Norfolk Broads, the middle of nowhere, and put them up there where they've got nothing?
Why does it need to be a hotel? I remember during COVID there's all this hoo-ha about constructing Nightingale hospitals, massive girt buildings where they were going to put multiple beds to treat people simultaneously if the need arose. Why can't you build a Nightingale asylum centre with multiple camp beds in it? I'm sorry, but that is safety. That is a roof over your head. You can have someone in the corner doling out some food so you are nourished, so you are protected. And that, but no, that's not good enough. Oh, no, they deserve more than that, these poor people. Oh, they've paid thousands of pounds to get here to people traffickers. We better make sure their money is worth their while. They deserve a 4-star hotel. Oh, while we're at it, let's give them PlayStations and smartphones. Don't you worry, the British people think you're wonderful. We can't wait to help you. We can wait to help you. We don't want to. We've had enough.
Well, sorry it didn't make you any calmer.
Yeah, ain't working, is it? Seriously not working this morning. It's just, I feel like everybody else, I'm at the end of my tether, and I'm scared about what happens now. I'm scared about where we go from here because I think this is going to erupt, and I don't want it to, but we're not being listened to. And this government is sitting there going, oh, I don't know, maybe we should build some youth centres, maybe to help people integrate, we should give more to the migrants. I mean, come on, get over yourselves. Oh, thank you, Steve, in Hertfordshire, for failing to calm me down. If you think you can do the job, I could do with some free therapy. 03444991000 is the number to call. Help Alex in her struggle. You can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note. 8722 is the number if you wish to send me a text message. Now we're going to continue this theme and also talk about e-scooter riders who may be forced to display licence plates, pass a test and have insurance in order to restore safety on our streets. We're going to be speaking to Reform UK's London Assembly member Alex Wilson after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the Rantathon. Moan of Arc is with you until 1 o'clock. Yes, that is my new self-titled honorific, if you will. Let's speak now to Alex Wilson, AM, Reform UK London Assembly member. Good morning, Alex. Well, it seems to me that what was in Epping Forest is now in London, because our friends who came over on boats are being given luxury accommodation in Canary Wharf, in the Britannia Hotel. What do you make of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I went down there this morning just to have a look, see what's going on, because obviously I saw the news yesterday that this has been the latest hotel to be requisitioned, if you like, by the Home Office for housing illegal migrants who've come here. Crossing the channel on the boats. We've seen that the crossings are up 50% this year compared to last year, and I think was it around 45,000 have come since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. So for all the talk of smashing the gangs, all he smashed are the records, and it's putting huge pressure on communities right across the country. We've seen what happened in Epping, which is not that far from where I live. We saw protests in Diss, in Norfolk as well, and now we've seen this going on at Canary Wharf. And I mean, Canary Wharf is an area which is well known for its high-end economic activity. It's a really important place commercially and for tourists as well. And having this kind of being dumped there is not going to help anything. And just moving people around like pieces on a chessboard isn't the way to answer this. We've got to stop the boats. We've got to start deporting people who have got no right to be here. They've broken the law to enter this country illegally. They shouldn't be allowed to stay. And once that decision is made, they need to go back.
Oh, exactly. I fully agree. Do you know what? I have a feeling I stayed in that exact hotel before I moved back to London when I had been living abroad. I have this feeling I was coming to London to do something, and I went on one of those apps where it's all like, we've got amazing luxury hotels, special offers, shh, don't tell anyone. I won't name the app. And I booked a hotel in Canary Wharf. I think my parents and I were coming to watch something at the theatre. I can't remember, but I'm absolutely certain it was the Britannia in Canary Wharf, and a nice hotel it is too. And you just think there are people living in Canary Wharf probably paying in the region of, I would imagine, £2,000 to £3,000 a month in rent to live in a one-bedroom flat, lucky if they've got a concierge and maybe a gym in their building. And these people are being paid for by us to live in a £400 a night hotel, complete with swimming pool and bars.
Yep. And as you say, it's us that's paying for it as the taxpayer. I think it's in the region of £6 million a day it costs to house these illegal migrants in these hotels right across the country. And it's no wonder people are getting fed up with it now, because we are and always have been a welcoming and generous country, offering support for those that are genuinely fleeing war and persecution. But they're not. They're coming from France. I go to France quite a lot. I'll be over there in the summer. I'll be keeping a very close eye on it to see if there is any war or persecution going on there, because so far I've not seen any. And they're men of young men fighting age coming across. It's not women, children, families, and that's why it's causing these problems. That's why you had the incidents that happened in Epping where a 14-year-old local girl was sexually assaulted, and that's why people are angry there. And it's going to spread across the country. I really don't like seeing those scenes. Nobody should endorse scenes of violence, disorder, clashes with the police. That's completely uncalled for. But you can understand why people are angry and they don't want this going on in their communities, and they don't want to be paying for it while they're you're going out, you set your alarm clock, you go to work, you try and earn a living, put food on the table for your family, and yet you're being taxed and taxed and taxed to pay for these freeloaders. It's absolutely got to stop.
When does the London Assembly rise for summer? Is it already out of session, or is it still churning away?
I think there's a few meetings still this week. All the meetings that I've got, all the committees I'm on, they all finished.
Is there any opportunity to stick it to Khan over this in mail question time? I'd love to see him
hopefully.
square.
I mean, it's the kind of issue that I'll be raising, as I always do. Although I don't know if you ever watched the London Assembly. I mean, it's not that exciting.
Oh,
but,
I've seen enough. I've seen how he responds to things.
Well, the thing is, he doesn't, does he?
Yeah,
he always
exactly.
dodges the question. He obfuscates, whether it's me or whether it's Susan Hall or anyone else. He doesn't really like getting to the grips of these questions. But no, it's something I'll certainly be looking to raise. But another thing, we are actually hopefully going to be having an emergency meeting to discuss the police station closures, because the Met announced either earlier this week or at the end of last week that they're now looking to close half of the front counters, which breaks a clear manifesto promise that Khan was elected on last year.
What?
He promised there'd be at least one 24-hour front counter available in every borough. That's now not going to happen. So we're hoping to have an emergency meeting to discuss that. Perhaps I can tack this on as well.
Oh, that is shocking. Shocking. Do you know, I found myself the other day having to walk into the local police station because someone had smashed up my car, and all I could do was, write something online to get a crime reference number. And then I tried to get hold of the CCTV CCTV, and I said, no, you need the Met Police to request it. Tried to phone the Met Police, can't get anywhere. Can you email us instead? So I actually ended up walking in to the local police station because you can't get in touch with the blimmin' people otherwise. And they said, I'm sorry, we don't really do this. You've got to contact this particular, the traffic office or something. So I emailed them, and then finally I got a letter through my letterbox saying, we don't investigate this stuff anymore. Fat lot of good that is. I mean, why on earth do we even bother paying taxes? Alex...
Shocking. Well, the things, a lot of this is a political choice. Yes, the police are overstretched and under-resourced, but a lot of that is a political choice from Sadiq in London. He spends 1.1 billion on policing. He spends 1.4 billion on net zero. If keeping the streets safe is really his number one priority, you need to follow the money. It's not what he's spending it on. That's what I'm, again, challenging him on a regular basis.
Right. How much is he spending on things like his nighttime czar and his diversity officers and all of his, wonderful make everybody multicultural schemes?
Well, the night czar, she resigned and nobody noticed because she'd done precisely nothing of value in the time that she was there. Yeah, it's quite a woke organisation. There's lots of DEI, lots of pronouns. And it's quite lonely, in a way, being here fighting against that. But I'm going to carry on fighting the good fight. Just because something's difficult doesn't mean it's not worth trying, and I'm going to keep trying my best.
Thank you, because you and I share a name, Alex, and our name comes from the Greek and it means defender of mankind. So we have a big job to fulfil. Alex Wilson, AM, Reform UK, London Assembly member. Right, OK, let's take a little break now. And after that, we're going to be discussing with the senior showbiz reporter at The Sun the passing of Ozzy Osbourne.
And he was the showman and remained a showman till, well, as we see, his dying day. It's very sad.
Very sad. And his big hit, the big Black Sabbath hit, was Paranoid. I know one lyric from it. Happiness I cannot feel, for love to me is so unreal. I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Well, I think that's the one which begins finished with my woman because she wouldn't help me with my mind or head, I forget which.
Damn good song though, Paranoid. Damn good song.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the programme. Now, most of us woke up this morning with the news, or even learnt it last night, that the Black Sabbath frontman and reality star Ozzy Osbourne has passed away at the age of 76. A music legend, particularly in the world of heavy metal. Let's speak to Dan Kane, who's the senior showbiz reporter of The Sun. Good morning, Dan. Ozzy Osbourne, I mean, some people might have said he did pretty well to get to 76, considering the madcap existence he seemed to lead.
Absolutely. I mean, through his heyday in the 70s and 80s, particularly, his kind of consumption of drink and drugs was legendary, and he kind of left a trail in his wake of all the cities he toured across, and he gave people like Motley Crue, notorious Hellraisers, a run for their money. So he did very well to make it to 76, and I think the gig that took place a couple of weeks ago at Villa Park was the perfect way to kind of celebrate his life and end that amazing career he had.
Do we have any details of what may have come to pass? Because, like you said, he did a gig really not very long ago. We know he'd been suffering from Parkinson's and sort of sat in a big ornate throne on stage at that gig rather than bound about stage like the Hellraiser that he used to be. But it seems to me that his passing was quite unexpected.
Yeah, I think it even took his bandmates by surprise. You see the tributes by Tony Iommi, the Black Sabbath guitarist. His first line was what a shock it was to him. He couldn't believe it. And I think there's limited details about what's happened after the gig out there at the minute, but leading up to it, he did a hell of a lot of physio. He was taking singing lessons. His heart was being monitored round the clock. He kind of gave his all to be ready for that gig. And when you watched him on stage, what was particularly heartbreaking, there were a few moments where he looked like he wanted to get off his throne that he was performing from and stand up and rock out, and he just couldn't do it. And you could tell that kind of weighed heavily on him. And I'm sure the effort he put in to get ready for this gig maybe took its toll. Who knows? I'm sure we'll find out very soon, though.
I mean, there's two very distinct chapters to the Ozzy Osbourne story, isn't there? And one is the sort of people around at the time of the 70s when he was touring the country, touring the world, in fact, and really setting the scene when it comes to heavy metal. But then later generations know him more as a reality star, shouting "Sharon!" You know, it's that sort of latter view of Ozzy Osbourne I think most people are probably thinking about today, because we got a glimpse into the private life of an individual that you really wouldn't have painted as a family man, and yet he was.
Absolutely. It was one of the first kind of big reality shows from an A-list name to let people into their homes, warts and all. And the way him and Sharon and their family lived certainly was that. They didn't shy away from showing you the good and the bad. I am glad in recent years it kind of, the focus switched back to his music again, because obviously he was a trailblazer in the 70s and 80s. And then, as you said, when that MTV show came out, he was known as kind of like the doddery, sweet granddad figure. And in recent years, he's kind of gone back to the music. He put out another album with Sabbath. He won a Grammy for his latest solo album back in 2022. So I think it showed he can do everything. His magnetic personality kind of transcends the stage. You know, everyone who's paid tribute to him is saying what a great personality was, how he lit up the room. He was so welcoming, despite his status. So, yeah, I think he'd be popular no matter what he put his heart to.
And so much owed as well, I think, to his wife, who took over from her own dad to be his manager, went on to marry him. And many people credit her with the longevity of his existence, you know, a calming influence, perhaps a stabilising force to a man who otherwise was very much prone to having bouts of alcoholism and drugs abuse.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ozzy said himself numerous times that Sharon was the leader of that family. And I was going back through some of the old Osbourne's clips today, and in one, he kind of likened himself to just a monkey playing the piano and playing to her tune, you know. So he was very aware of the dynamic in that household, and he was happy to kind of follow her lead. And she got him on the straight and narrow. If he'd have continued the way he was going, he probably wouldn't have made it to 76, you know. So he does owe her a lot, and she guided his career really well, you know. Brains behind the reality show too. So yeah, you've got to give her credit.
It makes dream copy for someone like you, doesn't it? Because, you know, when I've opened the newspapers today, it's all top 10 lists of the wildest things he did while he was on tour, biting heads off bats and doves. Some other stories which made my stomach churn, I must admit. But it does make for very colourful print.
Well, he was one of the last true living rock legends, you know, from an era where people didn't care about going out and hell raising, didn't have to worry about being caught on a smartphone down the clubs and the bars. What happened behind closed doors happened there, and it kind of made its way into myth, you know. And even to this day, people still talk about kind of the wild times of the 80s, particularly in LA, and when the big bands were touring at the time. So yeah, it's great. He hasn't shied away from that. He kind of embraces it, and it's almost like a cartoonish figure in a way, you know, and he leans into that. Some of the stories that kind of make your stomach churn, Alex, may or may not be true, but he's happy to kind of embellish details and for them to be circulated.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the one I was reading is what happened to the family cats, and as a cats lover, it rather upset me, I must admit. Dan, thank you ever so much for coming on, spending time what must be an incredibly busy day today for a senior showbiz reporter at the Brilliant Sun. Let's take a call now and speak to Caroline, who's in London. Hello, Caroline.
Oh, lovely to speak to you, Alex. I'm going to try my hardest to compose myself.
All right.
I feel exactly like you. So I'm concerned that government want unrest. They want the British to go out on the streets and do more of what's happened in Essex and everywhere else. And then they're going to bring their clamping down. And God knows what else they're going to do. For me, the only way we're going to win this, and I haven't got the exact answer, we have to, in masses, stop paying tax or stop paying council tax.
You know, it's interesting. I've heard this, a sort of national strike of ordinary men and women, the workers of this country, saying we're not going to tolerate any more non-violent protest. You know, I think you're right in on some way, which is the government, you said they want us out on the streets, but you also sort of infer that they don't with a clampdown. And I think you're absolutely right about this. I think that when they see peaceful protests like the ones in Epping Forest, they're rather inconvenient because it's the general public relentlessly insisting that their voices are heard, and the government can't drive them back into their houses and make them disappear if they haven't done anything wrong. So I do think on some level it suits the powers that be that things do escalate and then protests can be forcibly shut down, which makes me want to know what on earth Essex police were doing, busing protesters into the centre of those protests to try and create, one would assume, a clash. It makes me very sceptical, and I think we have every right to be asking Essex police these questions. You lied brazenly in a press release saying you didn't do this. You did. Explain why.
No, exactly. And also, you know, I've been listening to a lot of what Rupert Lowe's saying and also what he's doing. And even he mentioned at what point are the British going to say, no, we're not paying council tax, for example, because that's the only tax that everyone can stop. Obviously, you can't stop paying your taxes if you're employed. But we all know the fraud that's going on. Fraud off the scale. My issue is there's still a lot of people in this country that still watch the mainstream and have got no idea what's going on.
Oh, and yeah, you still got a load of the refugees welcome cohort. They're too much amongst us.
And I think they're our biggest enemy, the British people. This is now the most serious situation I think our country has ever faced.
I'll tell you what, maybe them all being moved to the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf is going to be quite handy, because I'm sure a lot of the refugees welcome cohort might have nice expensive flats in that part of London. They might soon have a taste of their own medicine, Caroline. You never know. Darling, thank you so much for your call. Let's listen to a voice note now. This is Ian.
Morning, Alex. Ian from Hemel Hempstead. I've just rung the local taxi service, the police actually, and told them there's a guy in the town centre, a far-right thug, that I want to go and confront. And they've kindly offered to send a car round in 15 minutes' time. So that's how to get yourself a free ride.
I don't know what to say about that, Ian, but nothing surprises me anymore. Except this. This is surprising me, because it might be a bit of common sense for my useless government for once. E-scooters. Oh, I hate e-scooters. I remember when there were talk of these things first coming to blight our pavements in Britain. Having lived in Brussels and waking up every morning, opening a front door to streets strewn with these vehicles, I knew what it meant for us. And I didn't want them here. And in theory, you're not supposed to ride them on the pavements, nor are you supposed to ride them on the roads unless you're insured. And yet they're everywhere. Oh, we've had these pilot cases because guess what? They don't pump out emissions or some such garbage. I'll tell you what they are. What they are is a very handy getaway vehicle for the handbag snatchers in this country. In fact, the Mail revealed that e-scooters were linked to more than 20,000 crimes In just 3 years, 20,000 crimes, drug trafficking, sex offences, thefts, even a drive-by shooting. Or should it be called a scoot-by shooting? These things are basically the steed of choice for ne'er-do-wells in balaclavas, brandishing machetes, terrorising our streets, snatching our phones. They should never have been allowed. They're dangerous to pedestrians. They have no right to be where actual grown-up vehicles with 4 wheels are operating. And yet there they are, littering the streets as some part of 15-minute city save the planet woke nonsense. Well, they finally decided that actually maybe e-scooter riders could be forced to display licence plates, pass a test, have insurance. I mean, why weren't they doing all those things anyway? And how are you going to make that work when you can just snatch one up from the side of the street with your belly on? You want people to get out their driving licence, but I've passed my e-scooter proficiency test. I'm going to put in my licence right now to get this little e-scooter, and I'm going to make sure I go at 20 miles per hour and always obey the highway code. BS! None of those people on those scooters are going to do that. Just get rid of the damn things. Chuck them in the dustbin of history. It was a failed experiment. Let's get back to people walking around where they can't use these things as getaway vehicles. Scumbags on our street with their drug dealing and phone snatching and mugging and machete waving and watch grabbing. That is what they're using. 20,000 crimes in 3 years. Just scrap the lot of them. Send them back from whence they came. Make people walk again. Oh, honestly. Everything. Just, why does it take 20,000 crimes for a government to go, oh, that was a bad idea? Couldn't you see it was a rubbish idea in the first place? No. Idiots. We're led by idiots. Do you know, Paul's just messaged saying, can you stop using Deliveroo and similar companies? If you use them, you are part of the problem. This is because we know that migrants in hotels are earning 40 quid a day at least delivering takeaways and stacking up the cash like they're some sort of rap star at our blimmin' expense. But, you know, I agree with you. In many respects, I have stopped using them. But when you do funny old shifts in this line of work and you're sitting at home and your stomach's growling and it's 11 o'clock at night and you need to have a bite to eat, I ain't leaving my house and walking down to the nearest shop that's open in central London. I'm not going to risk that. I'd rather Gabriella, who's actually 6'5" with a Captain Birdseye massive beard, turns up on my doorstep with a little paper bag with some snacks in it, than actually dare walk the streets of London alone at night. So believe you me, I'm trying not to use these companies because, like everything else, we need to just not be part of the problem. I agree with you, Paul, but sometimes, every now and then, in desperate circumstances, a takeaway is the only answer, innit? Morning, Alex. The police escorting left-wing counter-protesters looks like a deliberate attempt to incite violence purely so they can then lay the blame on far-right activism. The police are blatantly trying to suppress the voices of ordinary, concerned and genuine citizens. They then use the derogatory label of far-right to try and silence and intimidate those ordinary citizens and the rest of the country into compliance. It's so disgustingly obvious, says Carmel in Aberdeenshire. Carmel, normally I'd say tinfoil hat moment, but I think we've gone beyond the tinfoil hat now. When Essex Police have been on video doing exactly that. Why? Where's the statement? They managed to put out a statement lying that they didn't. Where's the statement now explaining themselves? I'm waiting. All right, yeah, where is it? Indeed. Anyway, we're going to do a little round of commercials now, but don't go anywhere. There is 2 more hours of Alex ranting to go. Make a cuppa, and I'll see you just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, you lovely things. Well, there you go. I've had a little bit of a breather. Tried to catch my breath again and calm down, get all zen, because I was getting pretty angry in that first hour. There is a lot to be cross about, isn't there? This is why we all gather together as one around the lovely bonfire of kumbayarism in Talk Towers and share some communal catharsis so we can all vent a little bit, because things are simmering up to boiling point, and it's not just us who feels it. Finally, it seems the powers that be might be acknowledging that the people of Britain are a little bit cross. In fact, this cabinet readout actually really pulls my chain. This annoys me more than anything. Bloomin' Angela Rayner, her of tweeting, "I love immigration. Diversity is our strength," has clearly had some wonk in Whitehall use multisyllabic words to say the Deputy Prime Minister said that economic insecurity... Oh, what? You mean like the kind that Rachel Reeves is foisting on the nation? The rapid pace of deindustrialisation? Oh, you mean like the net zero stuff that Ed Miliband's so keen on? Immigration and the impact on local communities and public services? Oh, you mean like putting more of these people into more hotels, getting rid of the Rwanda policy and doing naff all apart from some virtue signalling politics about smashing the gangs? Technological change in the amount of time people were spending alone online? Oh yeah, because you fully supported locking us all up in our houses during COVID. You wanted more. And declining trust in institutions. Oh yeah, like that time you lied to us after Southport. It's all contributing to having a profound impact on society. So basically, if I read between the lines and rephrase this a little bit, I'm going to change this. I'm going to make it more succinct. The Deputy Prime Minister said that this government is wrecking the country. Correct. Well identified. Gold star. Let's speak now to Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor at The Sun. Trevor, you know, what I don't get is they pay lip service, don't they, to integration, to wanting communities to come together. Diversity is our strength. Britain's a tolerant nation. Aren't we wonderful? But when they talk about integration, they can't seem to name one single policy that might extol the values of this country, promote its heritage, enhance its legacy, and make sure anyone damned well coming into this country abides by our cultural mores. They don't dare pay any lip service to that, do they?
Absolutely not. Look, I'm here, Alex, to give you a breather while you relax, and I'll do the venting instead. What struck me today, between the eyes, was a quote from Downing Street in the Times, which said that the Prime Minister had, ever since Southport, which of course he did his very best to cover up in terms of who was responsible for the murder of 3 little girls. Ever since Southport, again, where he turned up for 2 minutes or less to lay a wreath and then scarpered. Ever since Southport, he's been worried about the unravelling of unwritten rules that hold a nation together. Well, frankly, I think that that unravelling has taken place or accelerated in his first year in government. And I think what we're seeing and what they're acknowledging on the streets of Britain is what was inevitable. The frogs are getting out of the boiling water. People are getting really fed up. They've had enough, and they want something done. And this government is psychologically and politically incapable of doing what is necessary. And as long as the police are cooperating with the migrants and the protesters against curbing immigration, and indeed escorting them while they're in uniform, escorting members of Antifa, many of them wearing face masks, towards the Epping Hotel where these protests are taking place. That is literally throwing fuel on the flames of these angry people who will not stop at this. This is not the last, I'm afraid.
What do you think was going on there, because you don't just sort of send a police car to pick people up from a station as an act of kindness because they can't afford a taxi or they can't use their own legs to walk from position A to B. How do they know these protesters were arriving at that station to then take them to the protest site? It's got to have been, I'd imagine, pre-arranged. And for what purpose?
Well, it is totally inexplicable, as you say, Alex, and it is unexplained. The police are declining to elaborate on why they've done this. They've talked about issuing some sort of further clarification, but it is impossible to clarify what is a blatant example of the police inciting the anger of the local population by bringing in the very people who have aggravated the situation because they do not believe in borders, they do not believe in immigration control, and they're totally on the side of people who are frequently breaking the law and angering the public, who are seeing accommodation taken up by foreigners who have barged their way into the country, while they themselves wait on waiting lists for years, perhaps forever, for a council or social housing offer. So this is the fuel for the flames.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what sort of rubbish the Essex Police Force come up with at 1:15 today when this statement is due out. Because I remember last weekend them categorically saying in a press statement that they did not under any circumstances convey counter-protesters from the station to the Bell Hotel. And now we know that there's video evidence that they did. And unfortunately, Trevor, the only explanation in my mind, the only one, because like I said, it can't be sheer coincidence. The police van was just passing by and said, oh, we're going that way as it happens. Would you like to get in? In my mind, it has to have been prearranged, which means there is a motivation for doing this. And the only thing I can think of is this idea that they wanted things to get a little bit tasty so they could then clamp down on it and actually shut the protests down. And I think, if that is what has happened, people are going to be reflecting back on what happened in the wake of Southport rather differently, because those seem to start off, by and large, as quite peaceful protests until all of a sudden some pretty gnarly folk with balaclavas got involved. And I remember people at the time suggesting to me that they could have been deliberately corralled and curated in order for there to be a subsequent clampdown. And I thought, well, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility, I suppose, but I'm beginning to think maybe that's what happened.
Yes, I think we've gone beyond two-tier policing back to one-tier policing, which is not to police in favour of the resident population of this country, but indeed to favour and then provoke those protesters into coming into the area, as I say, where the only result possible is that the local people are going to be even more furious, get angrier, and then give the police grounds for arresting a few of them for being a bit noisy.
I have a feeling that the Cabinet are going to sit there when they try and figure out how to clamp down on potential rioting. Like I said, their playbook could well be to try and amplify things to then sort of be able to use the long arm of the law and be quite heavy-fisted into intimidating people to shut up and stay indoors. But I don't think the cork will stay in the bottle for long, especially as that bottle's being shaken, and especially if people start to see through the tactics that might be being deployed. And yet I'd imagine they're just going to say, oh, we need to build a community centre. We better accelerate the Islamophobia law. When actually what they need to do is throw some red meat to the public and actually say, we're closing down the migrant hotels. We're closing down this idea of putting people into private accommodation, which I think is much worse. And guess what? We were able to come up with the idea of Nightingale hotels during COVID. We're going to build mass centres of people on camp beds where they're going to be shut inside there while they wait for their applications to be processed. But they're not going to do that, are they?
No, certainly not. I mean, human rights comes before everything. Open borders comes before everything. And this government, with Lord Hermer as its Attorney General, are making it very clear that they side with those people who want us to simply open the gates and allow floods of people from all over the world, many of them with alien cultures and alien religious faiths, to come into this country unhindered and to keep the lid on the local people who justifiably feel very angry. And what I worry about now is that, having witnessed the sort of demonstrations we've had in London over the last weekend by the pro-Palestinian marchers, which brought the capital city to a standstill, that where Nigel Farage, for instance, is talking about public protest, I think that were we to actually do something now, if the police finally did act in a way which was really to stop these protests and stop these migrants, I think the backlash would come not just from the British community, but from those who have barged their way in here and are very assertive, bordering on the aggressive. And I really do fear those fights in the streets, but it will be by those who have arrived and are defending their apparent right to be here without permission.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I'd not really thought about that. But this emboldening exercise of people brazenly keeping knives under their pillow, working on the black market. I was reading a report that people could see in this hotel in Epping Forest through the window bottles of Moet champagne, for crying out loud. We know we're being taken for a ride, but like you said, these people must be feeling untouchable at this point. They know that they get whatever they want. According to various reports, they come in and say, I demand a phone. I want better Wi-Fi. Where's this? Where's that? They know exactly when they get in that boat to the UK what it is that they can demand and expect.
Well, you sum up exactly what the situation is, Alex. This is a situation which is out of control, and not only is it out of control, the authorities who should hold it under control have no intention of doing so. This government is pro-immigration. It is pro-open borders. It is right behind all of those anti-race demonstrators. In fact, almost every demonstration, no matter what it's about, whether it's about gender or religion or about race, they support to the hilt. Because these are the minorities, the impoverished minorities, who they feel, these hand-wringing lefties feel sorry for. Not the people of Britain who voted for them stupidly in the last election.
You're a veteran observer of our society and our politics, Trevor. What do you think's going to happen going forward? If we get another slew of protests up and down the country, if it descends into rioting, Lord knows what's going to happen in that September budget. I just kind of feel everything is so tenuous that something has got to give. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. What if you were to try and make predictions, and it's awfully difficult to do, of that I am certain. But how do you see this playing out?
Well, if I look into my crystal ball, I can see nothing good, Alex. I cannot see how they're going to change the attitude. It's not just the policies, it's the attitude of this government. And of course, now all the main authorities, which involve law and order and the general management of the country, that glue that Keir Starmer alluded to, where people stuck together and became part of a community. All of that has been diluted and dissolved. Nothing is going to put it back where it was. That is absolutely for sure. And before we get anywhere near that position, I think it's going to get a lot worse. There's no real voice, apart from Nigel Farage, to his credit, who is actually saying what people generally think. The problem with that, if you can call it a problem, is that it is provoking people to feel, rightly in my mind, that they have been taken for fools, not just by this government or by the last, both of which have basically committed crimes, social crimes against the people who voted for them, but dating right back to 2004 when Tony Blair opened the floodgates and invoked the human rights laws. The moment he did that, he paved the way for the problems we see today.
You know, if Sir Keir Starmer was so worried about this mythical social glue that he wants to magic back into existence to stop our social fabric fraying at the edges or tearing right down the middle, as it seems to be, he would have probably answered Sarah Pochin's question about would you consider banning the burqa for security reasons somewhat differently.
Indeed, and instead he's going the other way with this move towards Islamophobia bill. And that is really pernicious, because the moment you silence everybody's right to say things that they believe it to be true, and indeed are true and justified, about the fear of Islam in this country, because let's face it, most of the people who we're talking about now in the last few years of illegal boat people coming across the channel are Muslims, and they are sometimes assertive, to say the least, and maybe aggressive Muslims. They believe that Allah is great, and they say so. Allahu Akbar means God is great, and indeed, under the terms of the Islamic faith, there are no borders. Allah rules the world, and therefore Britain is not Britain. It is part of the global community, of which the Islamic faith feels that it is nowadays, with the collapse of, say, the Church of England or the Catholic Church, the main arbiter of our fate in terms of religion.
Yeah, the Ummah comes first when it comes to Muslims. They don't believe in borders. They believe in having, like you said, the kingdom of Allah wherever they come across, anywhere that they can live. And they think it's quite right for them to live as part of the Ummah and not integrate at all. And yet we can't talk about Islam. And you're right, we had no issue when genuine refugees in the form of women and children were coming over from Ukraine, when the Hong Kongese were fleeing persecution, coming over and rightfully taking up visas and citizenship here. But we do have a problem with these chancellors who hate us and hate our values, knowing what they're doing to come and live essentially parasitically in this country. Oh, Kev, I don't know what's going... Trev. All my men rhyme with Ev, don't they? I don't know what's going to happen, but thank you so much for looking your crystal ball, even if that outlook is bleak. Shall we do a call now and see what Stephen in Southampton thinks about the situation? Good morning to you, Stephen.
Good morning, Alex. Yeah, I would just like to bring up the point that the police allowed these Anfita and these left-wings to come to the Epping Hotel. Now, if you cast your mind back to the Southport riots, Starmer was very, very quick to say that right-wing were shipped in, were coming in, and they didn't live in Southport. Now, is he going to condemn the same about these people who caught trains?
But also it was lies. There was never any evidence of organised football hooligans being bussed in from other parts of the country. As far as I'm aware, that didn't actually happen.
You've got pure evidence now that they come by train and they were brought there by the police.
Yeah.
Now, he should now condemn those left-wing Anfita or whatever they want to call themselves, because as far as I'm concerned, they caused the trouble. They were the ones taunting the local people.
Well, yeah, exactly. They want to provoke a greater outpouring of anger. I mean, if someone can give me any other explanation, because, like I said, I find it extremely difficult to believe that the police van just happens to be passing the station at the exact moment these people got off the train and for whatever reason couldn't come to protest and said, do you know what, we're a country that believes in freedom of protest, so we will help convey you to that site. I find that extremely difficult to believe that such coincidences magically fall from the sky. There must have been a phone call to the police saying we're arriving at this time. There must have been an arrangement. And if there's an arrangement, it means that this act was done willfully and pre-planned. And if something's been done willfully and has been pre-planned, there is a motive. And I want to know what that is. That's what I want Essex Police to clarify now. We know you did it. We know you lied about doing it. Now you have to explain to us why you did it. And we're not going to be told, are we? At least we're not going to be told the truth. And then you got blimmin' the person who wrote this for Rayner saying that there's declining trust in institutions. Well, this is exactly why. Because you're lying to us. You're gaslighting us. Not only that, you have the audacity to point the finger of blame at the very people you then stick your hands in the pocket of to get the money out to fund all these policies that we fundamentally hate. Oh, Stephen. Thank you so much for your call, my darling. I hope things are a bit brighter in Southport than they feel in Southampton than they feel in London today. I'm just fed up. I was really chippy yesterday, and I've woken up this morning very, very cross indeed. If you feel the same, keep your calls and your thoughts coming in. After debate, we're going to change course a little bit and enjoy a bit of Schadenfreude, because it turns out that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's £100 million deal with Netflix has been binned. Poor them. That's after this.
So those protesting outside the Bell Hotel are normal men and women of Essex, their fathers, mothers, just concerned about the change in the community that they have seen as a result of the dozens of undocumented men being dumped in their community. They are concerned about the welfare of their children after reports of alleged gropings and things like that. They have every right to be protesting against this imposition that the government, as a result of its failed asylum policy, has dumped on their doorstep.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. And do you know what always cheers you up when you're feeling a little bit angry? That you're fed up with the world and life just doesn't seem very fair? A bit of schadenfreude. Some misfortune happening to someone who you'd rather be quite pleased that it happened to. Well, let's enjoy some of that, shall we, with Angela Levin, royal biographer, because it turns out, doesn't it, Angela, that Harry and Meghan's £100 million deal with Netflix is in the dustbin of history.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have thought it must come at some time because the programmes we saw from them were just dreadful. But, I mean, we didn't know when. And I think that it leads on to other things. I'll tell you about this one. This is that with Meghan, her latest thing, Lots of Love Meghan, is that it's only 3.5 million people who've watched it. And she's not in Netflix's 300 top people. So that's really shocking for her because she thinks she's the most amazing human being on this earth, and it's a shock. I think Harry's, which was about polo, has actually hardly got anybody. 500,000 watching, and he's in the four-figure in Netflix. So I'm sure they know about this because it's actually ends in September, and I bet you that they were being told by now. They can't just sort of show it to them just a week or so before. And I wonder, and I think I'm right, that this was the reason that Harry sent 2 aides to London, and there was another person who worked for the King, and they went out for 10 minutes on a balcony. But just at that time, along comes a photographer, takes them when they arrive, and as if they're sort of looking up, you know, who would do that? You wouldn't imagine them to know them. But this is about money. Some people think that it's about Harry wants to come back and be with the family, and he wants to forgive the family. Very nice of him, but he hasn't had any apologies yet for himself. And I think that that's what it's all about. He wants to force his father. He knows he's ill, doesn't know how long he's going to live, he's already said. And I think that's the reason that he's there.
Are you sort of suggesting that this is Harry sniffing about for inheritance?
Yeah. No, I don't think he wants to be king. He'd like...
no, but inheritance of cash money from the royal estate. That, you know, he's hoping when his dad passes away, that in his absence of the late father, it will furnish his palatial lifestyle.
Well, they have various amounts of money that people put in to make it better for them. It's not actually anybody's, it's theirs. But, you know, like you go to an advisor and they just make the money up. And Harry will know that he's got a few £1 million. It's not actually the King's. And I doubt if the King's going to leave him any money. But that's what he's going for, because they must know that, you know, they can't live at this level. But I'm very pleased that actually, they show that they're not perfect. They're not the best in the world. Harry doesn't think he's that, but he thinks Meghan is. They've got to rethink themselves. And I've seen a little snap of that as well. And this is Meghan has started talking about intimate detail about her family life, day dates with her 5-year-old son, and also what she does with Princess Lilibet and what she likes to watch on television. Now, this is actually, I think, her trying to give another image of being a wonderful mother.
The woman, it's like she thinks she's invented motherhood, like other people don't do this routinely and haven't done it since time immemorial, which has sort of led to the continuation of the human race. I don't know why she thinks she is the most brilliant at everything. She's the example that everyone must follow. Oh, look at me. I play with my kids.
Yeah, she said, I'm doing so much. Do you remember one of the things she was doing with a talk, which was a disaster? I'm so much. I have to look at things. I have to watch them beforehand, in the middle and afterwards. And with my children, I have to, talk to them. I have to run and get them from their school. As if it's nobody else does that. But she does it better than anyone else when she does do it. I mean, she's frankly a very unpleasant woman. And to make that very firm, there was 2 people who talked the other day about what one is Philip Millar, a Californian marketing executive, and the other is Camille Moore, star of popular The Art of Brand podcasts. They're very, very keen on brand podcasts, and they have said she's a fraud. She milks fame from marrying Prince Harry to sucker people into buying her stuff.
Yeah. I mean, how much of this 100 million are they going to keep? Are they basically pocketing it all and there's no more coming? Because 100 million for the average Joe would set them up for life and most of their neighbourhood.
Yeah, what they haven't let out is how many more programmes they had expected from them and how much money they've made from the things that she's done so far. And once they've worked that out, I don't think they're going to give her any more, but I don't know how much. That's not told to us yet, how much is actually using the vast amount. Now, this is a woman who's had everything possible. She's been on the front of every magazine. She's done everything that she could. People have looked at her all the place, and Harry is looked after all the time. And she's just no good. And if she can't actually do very well, then she can't be part of Netflix.
But how are things between them? Because it seems to me that people have been advising Harry, particularly when it comes to his African charities, go out there, reclaim them, do it by yourself, take back control, if you will, of your own brand, make yourself lovable again in the eyes of the wider public, because guess what? Your wife ain't helping you, son.
Yeah, well, Netflix don't want Harry to do anything anymore. So what's he going to do? He hasn't got much. He's supposed to be helping some people who suffer from mental health problems, but as he suffers them of his own still, I don't think that's a very good job, and I don't know how much he does on that. But he wants to, but it was a ridiculous thing, to go off to follow the footstep of his late mother, Diana, and walk down the same places that she did. And, it was just makes you feel quite uncomfortable. She died when he was 12. He's now 40. And actually, for anyone who's 40, you might be very sad that you don't have your mother with you anymore. I'm sure William longs to have his mother so that he could see their children. And but he's actually done it because he feels so unhappy still. I think he's just living in the past. Meghan told him that and told us that he's still very much living in the past, and he shouldn't. He should live in the
do you know what would help those two, frankly speaking? Cash the millions they've got, put it in some sort of, high interest account, live off that. And if they really want to extol their virtue to the world that they've got, apiaries and grow fruits and can make jams, genuinely go and live the good life then. Go and toil your own soil. Go and actually plant your own garden. Be quiet. Live as a couple. Bring up your kids. Be the good mother and stop chasing after constant publicity. That would probably help them out more than anything.
Yeah, but actually, really, Meghan got Harry because she wanted to marry somebody who would help her out. And I think that's what she got when she got him. But he's not actually right for her because he can't stand up to her. You know, she grabs his hand with the pictures in X today showing that he doesn't always hold his hand. She grabs his wrist so that he can't move out of an area that she wants. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? He's frightened of her and she does think that she's wonderful. But I think also if you've got a house with 16 bathrooms, you don't need it. But I think she's actually got to be with the group A, and she's not, and she keeps on trying. And we know that she's very, very determined, and she won't give in.
Indeed, that is one fame-hungry woman. Angela, always great catching up with you for a bit of a gossip. Righto, we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, did you know that girl who was banned from wearing the Union flag dress to her school's culture day or whatever it was because it's representing British culture? Isn't that atrocious? Take notes, Cabinet, on the very meaning of fraying social harmony. Did you know that it wasn't just her? Dozens of pupils were put into isolation for doing the same. We're going to be learning more about that after this break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Now get this. Part of nonsense extracurricular brainwashing that certain schools up and down the country have been following is having a diversity day. Way, woo, multiculturalism has strength, yay, immigration, woo, isn't the country brilliant as a result, woo. Yeah, we've all learned that's not true. But anyway, as part of Diversity Day, pupils were encouraged to come to school on non-uniform day wearing the dress that reflects their countries of origin, wearing something that actually shows off their heritage. And so kids turned up with Spanish flags or Jamaican flags or whatever it may be. How lovely that is. We're all together and this is where we're from and we want to celebrate our nations. But kids who happen to not be from India or Pakistan or Antigua or Mexico, who actually just happen to be, I don't know, British kids living in Britain, and then deigned to turn up at school with, I don't know, the British flag, were put in isolation and told off. What on earth? Being punished? Being punished for being born in the country you're living in? That's just balmy. This is the latest case where children at Ormiston Sandwell Community Academy in Oldbury in the West Midlands were asked to wear outfits to reflect their heritage. Leanne, who's 39, whose daughter Isabel, 15-year-old, got in trouble and was held in meeting rooms. Said lots wore their flags over their shoulders. Others opted to wear them around their waist as skirts. But Isabel was put into an isolation room almost immediately, as were about 30 other kids. So you take a load of kids, you tell kids to reflect your country of origin. The British kids come in reflecting Britain and 30 of them are taken out a lesson for doing so. What sort of sick, random, weird, mental thing is that? What on earth is that? We're not talking about naughty kids who are deliberately trying to provoke their teachers. Not that I can see why wearing your country's flag, if that's what you've been asked to do, is provocative anyway. No. One of them, 13-year-old Scarlett, was put into isolation for wearing a white T-shirt with a Union Jack on it. Her mum, Jenny, is a charity shop worker. A lovely lady who goes for free to volunteer in a shop for charity. I can't imagine she's some sort of ne'er-do-well rabble-rouser. I mean, this is just... And you wonder, when this is taking place in our schools, you wonder why people are going out and protesting. You wonder why they're sitting there wringing their hands around the cabinet, this Labour government, go, oh, I don't know what's gone wrong. People seem unhappy. We might have riots. Do you know what? Do you know what you should make your first policy in your next COBRA meeting about the tinderbox that is Great Britain? You should all maybe tune into this station, yeah? Maybe you should listen to some of our callers and what they have to say, because these people are your voters. They're the ones paying your wages and paying the hotel bills of all these people you seem to think it's fine to ship in here and look after, as if they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Perhaps actually you should all have some sort of learning day yourself. Perhaps you need to go on a training course. No. I'm not talking about critical race theory and how we're all so inherently monstrous and xenophobic. No. You've got a special course, that's right. Rachel Reeves and Bridget Phillipson and Sir Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner and the rest of you lot. I'm going to set the curriculum. I want you to sit down, take your own British citizenship test. I want you to go and visit some of these migrant hotels and see how they're living. I want you to go and meet face-to-face every single victim of a rape gang. And I want you to tune in and listen to talk radio. And then you might figure out quite why people are so unhappy in this country, because you don't seem to get it. So perhaps the people who need to be taken out and put in a special meeting room should be forced to wear the Union flag and forced to listen to what the great British people think of them. That might be a good start. And talking about the great British people and what they think, this is what this station is all about, the home of common sense and communal catharsis. We let people vent, and that's what we're going to do right now with Ray, who's in Welling. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
Well, I'm all right, apart from being blimmin' unhappy with the state of affairs in this nation. But, you know, we try and go on, don't we? We try and KBO.
Take some chill pills. Take some chill. Listen,
I've got a cup of tea, next best thing.
I've got an idea I'd like to throw at you. It's about these migrants coming over on the boats.
Yeah.
My idea is put the Navy halfway and use drones. Now, you have one lot of drones going up and down to spot these people getting onto the beaches, and you have another lot of drones that go in, the accurate ones that the Ukrainians are using, go in and punch them under the waterline with darts.
Yeah, but then the problem is, as great as that might sound to pretty cold-blooded people, the difficulty is, of course, that then you've got people drowning in the middle of the sea. And even though I don't advocate for escorting them to our shores and sticking them in a 4-star hotel in Canary Wharf, I can't stretch myself to wanting to see people killed, I'm afraid.
No, you've got it wrong. On the waterline, on the beach.
Oh, you mean in France? So we're basically... Well, look, I love a bit of that. I mean, I'd happily go invade France and take Calais back. Mary I made a big mistake when she handed that to the French. That'd be very useful to have in our litany of territories right now. But the problem is, I don't think we can go and essentially use what would be, even though it's, against these dinghies and we're giving French the money to do it themselves, I'm not sure we can go and perpetrate acts of what might be considered aggression on French soil. They're an ally.
Well, yeah, the thing is that if it was done, and it won't get done because you've got Macron who don't want it and you've got Starmer who don't want it. But the thing is this: if Macron said, "Get off our shores, you come into our water, get off this," we've shown him how to do it. We've shown him how to do it, and say, "Look, okay, that's fine. We won't do it. You do it," and he won't.
I do. Well, I know. I do think we need to be calling Macron to task. I think the easiest way is when we intercept these boats halfway across the channel. UK Border Force says we don't care. You can escort us back to your own shores because we're coming into your territorial waters. On the radio, hello, French Coast Guard. This is the UK Border Force speaking. We're going to do things a bit differently today. Thank you for escorting these people to the middle of the channel to meet us. We're now going to do the same and take them back to you. I hope you don't mind. Toodle pip. That's what I would do.
Yeah, but then you get the same resentment. You get the same. You're actually. The thing is this: we're not landing anything. We're not in their waters. We're not on their shores.
Yeah, but we'd be using sort of military technology in their waters and on their shores. I mean, I don't know which one is better. Whether we just peacefully escort a boat back and say, oh, you seem to have missed this one, by the way. We gave you that money to stop this, remember? Just thought we'd help you out. You seem to be struggling a little bit in carrying out your duties. Yeah? You want some help from the Brits, do you? That's all right. We're a good maritime nation. We'll show you how it's done. I kind of feel like that might be a little bit better. At least it's sort of principled. I mean, look, I love the idea of getting the drones out, puncturing dinghies in French waters. But I kind of think that'd be a little bit more provocative than just taking the boat back.
Yeah, but you've got it wrong again. It's not in French waters. It's on the beaches.
Oh, so on French territory?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, kind of, that's the same thing, but...
It is the same thing, but look, people in this country, I've heard it on your show, I've heard it on Mike's show, people in this country have just about had enough.
Oh, yeah.
It needs somebody to do something.
Well, it needs a range of things, doesn't it? It needs the UK Border Force to actually, I don't know, defend our borders. That would be a good start, even if those borders happen to be in the middle of the sea. It also needs there to be a deterrent, i.e. if these people can live in bin-bag bivouacs in Lune Plage in France, they shouldn't be put in four-star hotels in the UK. It should be like, here you go, here's a Nightingale immigration centre we've magicked up. That's where you're going to sleep on a camp bed, much like they do in places like Greece. Therefore, they'll suddenly go, yeah, don't fancy going to Britain after all. The other thing we need to do is drag the likes of Deliveroo and Uber Eats in front of a select committee and say you're banned from operating in the UK until you get your act together. Meanwhile, you're going to pay a load of fines because these people have been earning money via you, which you've been taking a cut of illegally. So we're going to fine you to the hilt and that money goes straight back to the UK taxpayer. Thank you very much. And then we need to say, here's the other deterrent. If you come to this country illegally, you're going to be put in that Nightingale migration centre, which is on some remote island in the middle of nowhere that Britain happens to own. And when you're not able to stay here and you've thrown your papers in the wash because you don't want to be deported back from whence you came, you are going to go to Rwanda because actually it was a pretty decent plan. That would be a great slate of policies to put in place, and actually pulling the emergency lever and going, this is now a national crisis. Our security is under threat, which we know it is. Except this blimmin' government, instead of going, how do we gaslight the British people into all thinking that immigration's always wonderful? It's a lot of useless. Ray, thank you ever so much. I do like your idea, though. Look, I do like it. I was just playing devil's advocate because as much as I want certain things to happen, it seems a bit beyond the pale that they ever will. Let's speak now to Louise, who's in Kent. Good morning, Louise.
Good morning. I've got a couple of things I want to comment on. One of them actually was just in the news just now.
Yeah.
One of the resident doctors on the committee coming out saying that if they go ahead in hospitals with trying not to stop operations and things, there will be a dereliction of duty. Well, may I remind that resident doctor that actually their strike and not working is a direct dereliction of duty in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's one of those things that certain emergency services are not allowed to go on strike because it's basically a matter of security and life and death. Yet these doctors who have been basically paid by the taxpayer, if they're working for the NHS, and they must be if they're moaning about their salaries and want to get more and have to go to West Streeting, so that means you are state funded. Therefore, we have paid you to do a job which is protecting us, and therefore if you go on strike, we're not protected. What I think is repulsive is the fact that some of these people seem to think they're going to be able to get paid or then come back and work overtime so they don't lose any money.
Yeah, and I think what's so awful about that comment is, of course, they can see that, let's suppose the senior doctors and the hospitals managed to manage without them. It would then completely mess up their strike, wouldn't it? Because they wouldn't be doing anything they wanted to do. Because they're saying to because senior doctors, claim £6,000, really, and they won't give the hospitals any indication of what they're doing when, so they can't plan. I mean, the whole thing.
What I don't understand, Louise, is, if you're a bright person, capable of performing surgery on an individual, capable of getting lots of A's in your exams and passing your medical tests and going to university and all the rest of it, you must have a few brain cells in your head. You'd imagine before you enter the workplace, you've looked up what your salary is going to be, because that's publicly available information when you're paid by the taxpayer. So you can't sign a contract saying, I want to be a doctor, sign on the dotted line, I'm going to go into the profession, then go, oh, I don't like that salary. I'm sorry, mate, it was there in black and white when you decided to become a doctor.
That's, again, I don't understand. But the other thing I was going to say, Alex, was we keep on hearing from this government, it was the 14 years of failure of Tories. Yes, I agree, there was a lot there, but also there was a lot with the Tories that as hard as they tried to get things through, they were thwarted by the civil service. I mean, don't forget, the civil service were threatening to go on strike if they were forced to send people to Rwanda.
And thwarted by Labour, let's not forget. They were in opposition and had significant numbers as the Tory 80-seat majority started to dwindle. They were the ones who blocked some of the things we needed to have happen.
And
Louise,
we've also seen with this government, if the backbenchers go against you, you can't get them through anyway. So there's that bit. But how come, 14 years, but this government have done 14 years, doubled it to 28, collapsed the whole country in a year.
I know, Louise, mate. I mean, they make the Conservatives' version of failure look amateurish. Louise in Kent, thank you ever so much for your call. We're going to go to an advert break now, and there's discontent not just in Britain, but there are protests breaking out in Ukraine due to controversial anti-corruption laws put in place by Mr. Zelensky, which essentially kind of stops the anti-corruption units doing what they should be doing. What is going on? We're going to be speaking to Owen Matthews, the inside story, author of The Inside Story of Putin's War on Ukraine, after this.
Labour government is using this ridiculous, in my opinion, and in Reform's opinion, this ridiculous policy of early release of prisoners because the prisons are full. That is not a solution. Why are we letting out dangerous criminals onto our streets, putting the public safety at risk because the prison places, there's not enough prison places. What we should
build them then. Build 10 more prisons. I don't get it.
on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, what on earth is going on over in Ukraine? Apparently, the President, Volodymyr Zelensky, has sparked outrage after quietly signing a controversial bill that slashes the independence of the nation's top anti-corruption bodies. Now, anybody who's familiar with Ukraine before Russia's invasion knows that it wasn't the most wonderful and pure and perfect country. Oh, it had a lot of problems with corruption, and it needed this anti-corruption infrastructure. And yet, apparently, Zelensky has signed a bill which essentially puts somebody above the anti-corruption body, somebody who is his ally, and is going to summarise, dictate their investigations, or so I understand. Let's get more detail on this. I am no expert, but someone who is Owen Matthews, because he is the author of Overreach, the inside story of Putin's war on Ukraine, has written a piece about this in The Spectator. Now, good morning, Owen. What is going on over in Ukraine? You summarise it, because you'll do a better job than I just did.
Well, what happened yesterday to isolated cries of shame in Ukraine's parliament, but most of Ukraine's parliamentarians essentially subordinated various anti-corruption law enforcement agencies to the government at Zelensky's order. There's no doubt that this was a project that was ordered by Zelensky and by his controversial chief of staff. Why did they do that? Because these anti-corruption bodies had reportedly around 260 members of Zelensky's administration and the government under investigation. And Zelensky wants to shut that down.
Right. And so
obviously that's terrible for civil society, for Ukraine's reputation, or Zelensky's reputation, particularly as an anti-corruption campaigner, which is what he came to power as back in 2019. And now he's gone full circle.
Yeah, and actually it comes at such a critical time, a time in which Donald Trump is beginning to side with the hawks over in the Oval Office and beginning to sort of push away the sort of pro-Russian side of the MAGA movement, beginning to be encouraged by his wife Melania to send weapons over to Ukraine and begin to talk tough on Putin and throw some sanctions in his direction, and sanction countries still cooperating with Putin. Is there a risk, for instance, that Russian FSB agents might be infiltrating these protests against Zelensky?
Well, I think that's the wrong question. The idea, the really serious thing is that this is a very serious miscalculation by Zelensky on two levels. One, he completely misread public opinion, and the law has triggered the first mass protests against Zelensky's rule since the beginning of the war. That's really serious. He miscalculated about what ordinary Ukrainians were going to say about this, and all of his former cheerleaders in civil society and in the independent press have now turned against Zelensky. And second, he's totally misread the room in terms of, as you rightly say, what's happening in Washington, what's happening in the EU. Just as things were starting a little bit to go his way after the disastrous Oval Office meeting back in February, when Donald Trump humiliated him, this is exactly the wrong thing for Zelensky to have done, because it plays precisely into the whole MAGA narrative that the Ukrainians are just going to steal.
But it does play into Russia's hands, doesn't it? And Russia aren't exactly the type to miss an opportunity, particularly when it comes to sort of civil unrest. They often find ways with agents to infiltrate such things. Where do we go from here? Would this potentially lead to the downfall of Zelensky? Is there a viable candidate to take his place?
Yes, of course. There are several. One of them is actually the leading one is actually sitting in West London right now. He's the Valery Zaluzhny. He's the former commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army, who was fired by Zelensky a year and a half ago, and is now the Ukrainian ambassador to London. He regularly tops polls. There are other figures, and very unusually and interestingly, the head of Ukraine's military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, just just came out and called for national unity and said that the armed forces would always be ready to ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and unity, which is a very strange and slightly sinister way of saying that the army is following this very closely. But the bottom line is that the wheels are kind of coming off the Zelensky regime. He's starting to make serious mistakes, and that's actually very bad news for Zelensky himself. I think it actually could be quite good news for Ukraine.
Right, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you that, actually. You know, if he, you know, everyone's favourite golden midgets wheeled out at Glastonbury Festival to talk in his gravelly voice about peace and democracy in Europe and why Ukraine needs so much help. If he's fallen from grace and is pretty unpopular, might there be an opportunity with new leadership to reinvigorate the West's support for Ukraine?
I think there's the opportunity to reinvigorate the peace process, because actually I don't think there's any chance that Putin will actually come to make a ceasefire while Zelensky is in power. So actually Zelensky, who had played such an enormous role in saving Ukraine at the beginning of the war and rallying support and rallying his own people, and that was an extraordinary and historic role that he played. Now that role has come to an end, and I think that his presence is actually one of the major obstacles to peace. So given that there's basically no chance whatsoever that Ukraine will recover the territories that it's lost, the partition of Ukraine is sadly a reality, and that's not going to change. Given that the initiative now is with Putin, sadly, there's however much equipment the United States may or may not provide, even if, let's say, for the sake of argument, Donald Trump has a total change of heart, resumes all the full shipments, I still don't think that's going to make a huge difference on the ground. So the question is, under what terms and when does Ukraine actually come to a ceasefire? Because what many senior Ukrainian officials, past and serving, have told me is that there's a real danger that Ukraine will actually fall apart and just disintegrate if the war doesn't come to an end. So actually bringing the war to the end is probably the most patriotic and the most important thing for the survival of Ukraine right now.
Owen, thank you ever so much for your insights. It seems like sands are certainly shifting over there in Kiev, so let's watch this space. That war has dragged on for a very long time. Perhaps the winds are changing. We're going to take a short break now, but there is still one more hour to go, so don't go anywhere. You know what I'm going to say. Put the kettle on, and I'll see you on the other side of these short commercials.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. 2 hours done, one more to go. I'm feeling a little bit better. I came in like a bear with a sore foot this morning. I was very cross, very angry. I am most days, but normally I try and be a little bit more chipper and put a smile on my face and sort of laugh through it all. But then some days it just really gets on top of you, doesn't it? And today very much felt like one of those days. But here we go. Let's try and perk up, shall we, in the last hour? Although I don't think that sensation is going to last for long, because I'm about to bring you a brilliant story. And I don't mean brilliant, well, hey, woo, good news. I mean brilliantly investigated, because what you are about to learn is going to horrify you, which is why I'm saying brace yourself. Plant a fixed smile, a rictus grin on your face, all right? Yeah? Yeah, sit back. Look at something nice around you. Look at that lovely vista of London. From this height, I can't actually see the people on lime scooters stabbing everyone. How pleasant. So prepare yourselves, because we're going to be joined right now by Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, who has been snooping around quite what is going on in Calais. And what she has uncovered is going to make you sick to your stomach. Hello, good afternoon, Isabel.
Good afternoon. I'm honestly a bit grumpy myself as well. I mean, there's so much to get annoyed about right now, isn't there? And I'm sure you've been talking this morning about what's been going on in Essex with Essex Police and so on. But let's focus for now on the mini investigation that I ran in Calais. I was prompted to start some of my own research after Keir Starmer's latest wheeze for stopping the boats, the one in, one out scheme, that brilliant idea that he's had with Emmanuel Macron. And I thought, well, it's time really to have a look at exactly the scale of the challenge that both countries face in sorting this out. So as an initial recce, I had a couple of researchers go over to Calais. It's not that I don't want to go myself. I will be going myself, but it's just trying to maximise as much research as we can get done in the time available. And a couple of really big things I felt emerged from that. First of all, and this is perhaps the single most worrying thing, we picked up evidence that now it may be the case that some migrants, maybe even more than a few, are coming over to this country for free. They're not actually paying anything to the people smugglers up front. And if you think about that, there are so many implications, but it's also really logical. You know, it's been tends to be reported that the cost of a place on a dinghy is about £1,000 or £1,500. Now, if you look at the average annual incomes in the countries of origin of most of these migrants, Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, that is basically the entire annual average income for people. So to put it another way, it's like asking a British person to come up with about £30,000, a bit more than that actually, average annual income in the UK. And clearly the kind of people that are coming in boats are not actually high earners anyway. So the likelihood is they're not really earning anything in their countries of origin. So how on earth are they paying for their tickets? That has never stacked up to me. And we now have on camera a migrant saying actually he's not paying anything. And follow that through to what that actually means. What that means is it's buy now, pay later. Pay later, how are they going to do that? Well, I think we can all imagine pretty easily the kind of nefarious activities that the people smugglers will be asking of people who get on board those boats on buy now, pay later schemes. So effectively, you know, we've always known the people who are coming over on boats are already criminals. They're breaking the law by coming into our country in that way. But actually, we are potentially now importing people who are destined, they're committed to a future, at least in the short term, of criminality in order to repay their fare. I think that has huge implications for policy.
Oh, it really does. I mean, again, it sort of echoes calls from sensible folk like us that this is a matter of national security. And Kevin O'Sullivan had someone who worked in a migrant hotel whistle blow on his show, talking about finding knives under pillows, bags of cocaine. I think we can well imagine that the international criminal cartels in charge of people trafficking are also connected to sex trafficking and drugs trafficking and Lord knows what else. Of course, no doubt, these people who've said, oh, I'm going to pay later, well, when they arrive, say, I'm an indentured slave. I've been trafficked, so therefore I must stay. And our high courts are going to go, oh, you poor little dear. Of course you can.
I mean, look, this is reaching a tipping point, I think. You know, we've seen what's going on in Epping. These are not far-right thugs. Of course, there's, as always, with all these protests, there's always a few wrong uns on the fringes of them. On both sides, by the way, far-right, far-left, whatever you want to call it. The majority of people who are protesting outside migrant hotels in this case are ordinary families who are worried for the safety, in particular of women and children in those areas. And they are entirely right to be worried based on the statistics about the behaviour of the people that we are bringing in to this sort of accommodation. And, you know, the more I hear and look into what we are providing for people who come over on these boats in a criminal manner, the more it absolutely beggars belief. And I just don't think people can put up with it any longer, but they don't know how to stop it. You know, what are we supposed to do? There's no election tomorrow. You know, people don't want to go on the rampage. That's not the British way. So what on earth are you supposed to do? What are we as a collective? You know, the hundreds of thousands, I would say most likely millions of people up and down the country who are sick to the back teeth of seeing their taxes go down the drain in this way, basically throwing good money after bad, have no outlet for their frustration. So don't be surprised, politicians, if they take to the streets.
No, I totally and utterly agree with you. Now, I've got to pick up something else in this article because this beggars belief. I want you to tell the story of the large white buses.
Well, thank you for picking up on that, because I too was amazed by the role of the large white buses. So my researchers took photographs of white coaches. We're not talking little run-around local minibus type things providing local transport for local people in northern France. These are coaches that look as if they're designed for long distance. They're not sort of town, little town runarounds. They're long distance coaches. And we photographed them dropping migrants off at what appear to be unmarked spots, which are within walking distance of well-known departure points for the boats. So effectively, you've got bus companies who are, in my view, my personal view, what they are doing is effectively aiding and abetting the people smuggling industry, because they are knowingly moving around migrants from A to B, A being France and B ultimately being Britain.
Is this a suggestion that these migrants are in other parts of France and these bus services basically, are you trying to break into Britain? Don't you worry, hop on this coach and we'll take you to Calais where you can try your luck in a dinghy. Is that essentially what we've got going on?
Well, what is not clear is where these journeys begin on these white buses. I mean, there's an awful lot of circulation of migrants in the whole of that northern France coastal area, you know, because many of them are hanging around for weeks, even months before they get their big moment to board a boat. And they seem to fill their days just drifting around from one encampment to another, going to the towns, hanging around the stations. We filmed a massive throng of them just sitting around in a train station. But it looks very much, and in fact, having looked into this further, I've translated an article in the French press about the role of these coaches. The drivers hate their part in this racket. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They, understandably, the drivers of the buses feel, well, it's not their job to police who doesn't get on board. But they are quoted in the French press saying that migrants often get on board carrying their life jackets, leaving no doubt about their ultimate destination. In my view, the French government should be preventing this sort of circulation of movement. You know, there they all are on a bus. Well, why aren't the French authorities detaining every single one of them rather than escorting them on and off buses, which is something else we witnessed?
Well, do you know what? I reckon we could give them a taste of their own medicine, because the EU seems pretty unhappy about the idea we might strike some sort of returns agreement with France, independently of Brussels say so, even if it's the worst deal struck in the history of deals. So perhaps what we should do is say, here you go, here's Northern Ireland, get on this bus. The EU doesn't like a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. They made that very clear. If you get on this bus, you can go straight back to the EU and try your luck there again.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that anyone actually, once they've got to Britain, wants to leave Britain. I mean, ultimately, we still provide the absolutely, 5-star service, don't we, for these people who are coming over. I mean, I'm astonished the more I look into this about what is going on, behind closed doors in these migrant hotels. I've just watched some footage, and I'll be doing more on this for talk, or from inside another migrant hotel, where the illegal immigrants, because that's what they are accommodated in 4-poster beds, an accommodation, I mean, genuinely luxurious accommodation, versus the staff quarters, which, in the word of someone who got in there undercover, are like prison cells. I mean, I'm watching this with mouth open. There's evidence of drug taking in these rooms. There are designer clothes around. We are providing not only 3 meals a day, but apparently we're providing entertainment in the form of bands coming in to keep these people happy. We're delivering snacks to their door as well as the 3 meals a day. I just think the British voter does not know the half of it, and already the British voter is red hot, boiling mad about this, and quite rightly so.
I've been sent some photographs. Actually, a very dear friend of mine works in sort of the social housing sector for all good reasons, works with vulnerable children and those with learning difficulties who want to have independent living, but knows people who work in the housing sector who have been asked to accommodate some of these migrants in the houses of multiple occupancy. And he sent me, forwarded across photographs where this lovely apartment that's been done up to sort of council-issued standards, has got to be good for the migrants, was basically trashed. And there's a sort of, those things, induction hobs, that's it. I always want to call them transvestite hobs, I don't know why. Those induction hobs have been basically smashed up. And they had got coals and put it on top, and were lighting fires with coals on top of this brand new oven. And you just think, what on earth, what is going on?
Well, those sound really interesting pictures. I don't know whether you're able to publish them.
I'll send them over to you, my lovely Isabel. You'd be the right person to deal with them.
I really would look forward to digging into that a bit further.
What do you think's going to happen now? I mean, what do you make of the fact that, it seems like the protests in Epping Forest might have got its own way, possibly. It seems like they're now being moved over to Canary Wharf, and the Bell Hotel might no longer be used as a migrant hotel. And I've got 2 questions for you. Question 1 is, do you think now that's going to vindicate and promote more protests which could spill over to riots up and down the country? That's seemingly what the Cabinet's so worried about. But also, how on earth do they then deal with it? Is the actions of Essex police picking up counter-protesters, taking them to the heart of the action, which I suspect might have been a tactic used in the Southport riots, and I don't think that's a conspiracy theory anymore. Are we going to sort of be Groundhog Day, and the government or the security services or the powers that be are going to try and clamp down on us again in that oppressive manner as they did last summer?
Well, the actions of the Essex police, and I know that they've either been holding or are going to hold a press conference today to defend what they did. But on the face of it, this looks to me like the ultimate form of gaslighting by the authorities. You've got the Prime Minister and those around him lashing out at the so-called far-right thugs creating trouble outside a hotel. Oh, but then we find out that they've actually literally helped bus in far left people, and I'm going to not call them thugs. I don't know what they were doing, but I do have to ask why they arrived with masks over their features if they are there for an honest and peaceful protest. And it is not the job of the police, as they claimed, and I quote, to facilitate peaceful protest. It is the job of the police to police peaceful protest, but they are not there to make that stuff happen. And as they know full well, by enabling and helping people on what we might call the other side of the argument to come to the site of a protest, what do we all think that's going to do? Is that going to promote peace in our times, or is that going to actually?
Well, let's take this one step further, okay? Because, you know, what I've been saying earlier on is you don't just happen to be driving your police van past a train station, see some people thumbing for a lift and you go, don't worry, lads, we're on our way there. Get on board, we'll give you a ride. To me, that is pre-arranged, right? It'd be a weird coincidence otherwise, and that's not the job of the police, even if it was a weird coincidence. So it's pre-arranged, which means that there's a motive for doing it. And I remember after the Southport riots, people saying to me, people who I take very seriously, not crackpot tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, but people who understand a bit better than I do the way certain elements of the deep state works. And they said to me, well, look, it was funny. There were protests going on around the country, ordinary locals. Yes, there's a few lobos hurtling the odd Coke can. But all of a sudden, people seem to turn up, young, fit men, festooned with black ballies and black outfits, looking like little ninjas, right at the front, getting aggressive. And then all of a sudden, when things kicked off, they seemed to duck under the police line, go behind the police and disappear from view. And people suggested to me back then, last summer, that what started off as peaceful protests might have been, and look, I know this sounds like a wild allegation, I haven't got the evidential proof, but what's just happened in Essex has brought it back to mind, that perhaps protests are deliberately infiltrated to turn up the volume so they can then be shut down.
I mean, I'm afraid to say I don't think that's unrealistic at all. Now we know that certain police forces seem to think it's their job to facilitate, and think hard about what that word means. It means to make happen, to make it easy for people of all sorts to come to trouble spots. That is not their job. And I just think we're on a knife edge here. We really are. And I support peaceful protest outside migrant hotels where people feel that their communities are not safe. This is intolerable to communities. It is intolerable. We are becoming third-class citizens in our own country, and people are struggling. They're struggling to put food on the table. They are struggling to have decent accommodation and to pay the bills. And it is simply unfair for the taxpayer to be expected to fund this on an industrial scale to people who do not deserve it. And I am not saying that there are not some people to whom we should be giving generous refuge, but this is way, way, way out of control.
Well, it isn't just the economic factor, it is the security factor. It is not just bombarding our own culture with an enemy culture, quite frankly, because a lot of people in these countries don't just fail to share Western values, they actively oppose them and want to destroy them. But also, if people are getting on these boats for free, I'm thinking to myself, who might be happy to pay the bill of somebody wanting to come into Britain? Oh, that's right, the terror organisations who would love to flood our nations with fighting age young men who would actually then cause significant harm in this country. And that scares me right to the bone. That's chilling, because when you think of the hundreds of thousands who have come over already, even if just 1% of the 100,000 was a wrong un connected to terrorism, that's a heck of a lot of terrorists we're putting up at our expense in hotels.
Alex, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think our political leaders don't get it? I spend a lot of time thinking, what is it about this they don't understand? What is it about the simple economics of this?
I don't know.
They don't understand. The country is going bankrupt. So why do they think we can afford billions to look after people to whom we owe nothing, and worse, who are going to make our country a worse place?
I don't know.
I mean, understand.
The counter-extremisms told the government well over a year ago, because I reported it on this show, that actually there will be wrong uns in the midst of those people coming over, that hostile states are using people trafficking to infiltrate us with people who mean us harm. They've been told told this. So the fact that they're not doing anything, I don't know. It drives me around the bend, because you reach for all the plausible excuses. Well, it might be the ECHR this, and lawyers saying that, and Whitehall saying this because they live in leafy suburbs and these things don't, you know, happen to them and their families. But are they all that stupid and that brainwashed that they don't realise the act of cultural vandalism, the national self-harm being committed? Because it doesn't make sense. You know, people always say it's either cock-up or conspiracy, and I really don't want to have to go, they're doing this deliberately, but you're kind of left going, well, why else is it happening? I don't have the answers.
Well, here's the other thing that they always say when you don't understand something: follow the money. And the reality is that there are now hundreds and thousands of businesses making an absolute killing out of this racket off the back of the British taxpayer. And the one we always hear about is, of course, the people that are letting, in my view, very unethically, letting out their premises, whether it's the property they own privately or whether it's hotels or whatever. They are making a killing from the rents that the Home Office is paying them. We hear about that a lot. But this goes far, far, far deeper than that. You know, if you look at what's being provided at migrant hotels, the whole gamut of goods and services that are flowing into those premises on an hourly basis. There are huge numbers of companies, from catering companies to, you know, the provision of healthcare. I mean, any number, entertainment, as I said, provided. There's an awful lot of people who are making very, very good money out of this, and are very, very happy for it to go on just like that.
Oh, and especially the lawyers. The lawyers are coining it. Isabel, it's always great catching up with you. Excellent journalism, as always. Isabel Oakeshott, ladies and gentlemen, Talk international editor, getting an absolutely sensational scoop there. Told you it was going to get on your nerves, didn't I? Right, calm down, calm down. It's time for a little break, but after that, it's your opportunity to give me your thoughts on everything you've just heard. 03444991000 is the number to call. Normal network rate. Use it for WhatsApp. Leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, 8722 on the text like talk before your message. I'm back after this.
As a percentage of those who commit acquisitive crime like shoplifting, those who commit it purely for fun because they don't want to pay for stuff they can afford is actually a relatively small number. 80 to 90% of acquisitive crime, as I say, is committed by people in desperate straits of one kind or another. And some of those desperate straits, if not most of them, are not their fault. So let's look at treating mental illness and addiction in a grown-up and responsible way, and not just demonise people and lock them up at vast expense. I don't want to pay 50 grand a year to keep shoplifters in prison.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back. It's time for your calls, but before we go there, I've got some breaking news. The amateur series of MasterChef, which was filmed last year, before allegations against both Greg Wallace and John Torode were upheld, will still be broadcast on BBC One and BBC iPlayer from August the 6th, the corporation has said. So there you go. You can still watch it. They've sacked both men, but they'll still play it out on iPlayer for you to enjoy, get their cash money. So there you have it. I mean, could they really be that monstrous and bad if you're still going to play their series? I don't know. I mean, Greg Wallace, he seemed to do some pretty choice things, which I wouldn't agree with. I feel very sorry for John Torode. Very sorry for John Torode. He was rapping along to a track. Yes, he might have used the N-word, but it was in the track. And it was years ago, in a bar, and he can't even remember doing it. What really stuck in my craw was all those whiny do-gooders at the BBC, the other celebs whistleblowing, going, oh, it was very bad. Oh, wasn't it disgusting? I would never do that. Get off your high horse, you big bozo. But anyway, Amateur MasterChef will still be played out on BBC One and BBC iPlayer this summer. Right, let's speak to Nick, who is in Chichester. Good afternoon, Nick.
Yeah, hi Alex, good afternoon. A great interview with Isabel, and I heard her last night on Kevin's show. But it wasn't until this morning when she talked about the white buses, which made me realise that these white fleet buses are used around Europe and the UK as well for transporting military people. So basically there's bus companies, white fleet owners, who rent them out to the military. But generally, that's their main job. That's who
Nick,
they get.
do you have a, before you carry on, do you have a pet seagull or something, or an eagle? Like, are you some sort of falconer with a bird of prey on your arm? What on earth was that screeching noise?
This is what happens down by the seaside. We have a lot of migrants and a lot of seagulls.
Ah, well, pests everywhere. And migratory birds. All things migrating down at the seaside. Talk about these, so you're talking about you've got white buses used to transport military personnel.
Yes, basically, they're called white fleet buses. It's available on Google. You can find out. For example, in the last 20-month period, the British Army rented over 18,000 53-seat coaches. So that's 18,000 journeys that the British Army paid for. It's on Google, so it's not breaking any secrets. And when I go on adventure training trips to France, the French Army will rock up in exactly the same white buses. These white fleet buses are being booked and paid for by authorities, I would hazard a guess.
But the seagull agrees. The seagull thinks you're onto something because he's flown over the channel and he's seen it with his own eyes, that gull. His beady little gully eye has spotted those buses in France and thinks you might be right, that they might be state-funded buses.
Yes, they can only be that because no one in their right mind, a family business with buses, would drive migrants around because they become a target. So who is booking these buses when it's clearly a state-sponsored?
Yeah, do you know what? There's more to this, Nick. I'm going to get that Isabel to carry on digging around in this one because it's fascinating indeed. You go hang out with your birdie friends. Do you know what? I think I'm the only person on planet Earth who really likes seagulls. I'm being honest. I'm not making it up. Ask me other half. He thinks I'm mad as well. But I actually think seagulls are really cool. They make for life. They've got interesting societal structures. They're hyper-intelligent. They're funny. Yeah. Don't ever kill a seagull. You know what happens if you do? You're cursed. Right, let's speak now to Shirley, who is in the Cotswolds. Hello, Shirley, in the lovely Cotswolds.
Hello, Alex, from the lovely Cotswolds, yeah. Alex, I've been listening to Isabel Oakeshott, and she's asked some questions, and then she answered them herself. These people coming over, she says that she thinks that they're not paying, but when they get here, they will have to pay it at a later date. Well, because of what's been happening and various things in the media, I mean, you get, all of the presenters get constant calls from people advising the government what they should do to stop the boats. The government do not need any of us minions to tell them what to do. It's blatantly obvious to everybody, and they're ignoring it. So all I can think is there's someone we'll never know who is putting these leaders, these pussycat leaders, into place to carry out their instructions. Whether it's Soros or Gates, all of these people that we hear about, I don't know, but something is going on, and it is intentional.
It's funny, isn't it? Because, like, you know, I don't. When it comes to is this a master plan and a conspiracy, I still still just about lean on the side of we've just got ridiculous woke leaders who just don't live in the real world, who, because they've had to sort of follow all these mantras climbing up the greasy pole to get to the top, they vehemently believe in multiculturalism is our strength and international law and all the rest of it. I tend to think that they sort of just subscribe to all that stuff and are then now delayed after the rest of the country having their wake-up call. But at the same time, it's so ridiculous. It's so patently obvious that this is so harmful to our country that it does leave huge questions in my mind, Shirley. I ain't going to lie. There are questions in my mind.
Bigger than that, Alex. The promise of bigger things to come for them is what they're... I mean, there are no bigger schmoozers than Macron and Starmer. They cannot schmooze enough with the EU because they want to end their careers in Europe, like Neil Kinnock did on the gravy train. But, it's intentional and we will never know why this is happening, but they're certainly putting leaders in place.
It is funny. Other countries in the Western world don't exactly do the same thing, do they? And there are many... Every question invites another question, basically. Where are you in the Cotswolds, my love?
I'm quite close to Morton in the Marsh, but
nice.
Apparently there's been some speculation that Vance is going to be spending some holiday.
I know, right? Do you want to have some other good news, Shirley? It's even better than Vance coming to the Cotswolds this summer. I'm coming. I'm moving back. I'm from Gloucestershire and I'm going back. So there you go.
I would love to have a glass of wine with you somewhere because we've got so much to discuss, but the influencers have already jumped on this and they've got it all over Instagram. And one girl who sells the Cotswolds as her influence job has been putting stories up this morning, warning them away. Nobody wants them.
Oh, for God's sakes! I bet that's the wrong. There's two versions of the Cotswolds in my mind. There's the Oxfordshire side where all the Londoners go and sort of mess up the place by making it all woke, and then there's a bit where all the farmers live in the Gloucestershire side where you can get some really nice scran and rub shoulders with ordinary people. So I'd say to JD and Usha Vance, come down the Cotswolds, but go to the right bit. Otherwise, you're going to find Ellen DeGeneres and those people over there. Shirley, thank you ever so much, my darling. Thank you ever so much for your call. Right, talking about JD Vance, what about his big boss, Mr. Trump? Because he's getting a lot of pressure from inside the MAGA movement to publish the Epstein files. Well, to try and deflect or to vent a little bit, he's ordered his DOJ to speak to Ghislaine Maxwell to find out what's going on. He's controlling the situation, isn't he? He's controlling the dissemination of information. Is that because he's culpable? I don't know. After the break, we're going to be speaking to the wonderful Adam Coleman, great friend of mine, columnist at the New York Post, to find out more.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
What is going on in America, eh? Don't know if you've been following this, but Donald Trump, he made such a big deal of going to release the Epstein files. We're going to release those files when I'm in charge. We're going to get all the dirt. But that didn't happen. He hasn't released those files. And the MAGA movement are like, come on, son, what is going on? And now there's speculation that maybe it's because Donald himself is in them. Although the Biden administration would have known what's in them files. They wouldn't have missed an opportunity to publish anything that could bring down Donald Trump, surely. What is going on? I know a man who might have some idea. It's Adam Coleman, columnist at the New York Post. Hello there, good afternoon to you, Adam, or good morning where you are. Tell us, what is this? What is going on with the Trump-Epstein sort of enigma?
Well, good morning to you. You stole a little bit of my thunder because I was going to make that point. The Biden administration had 4 years. They were looking for every sort of reason to go after him, making up all these different cases in Atlanta and New York to try and keep him from running for president. And so if that existed within the federal government, the Biden administration would have used it. So I don't think there's a there when it comes to some sort of deeper conspiracy linked to him. The most likely, and I think this is the unpopular opinion, is that they're actually telling the truth now. There is nothing there. That's why they haven't released anything. The truth is that they oversold this from the very beginning. All these people who played themselves as truth tellers, like Kash Patel, before he got into power, said, if I got power, we're going to uncover, we're going to do all these things. They gave him power, authority, and clearance, and they found nothing. Everyone's saying, finally, the truth. There is nothing there.
So they're worried, actually, that if they now publish these files and there's nothing to see here, the general public will go, yeah, that's because you're not published all of them. You've redacted them, right?
But this goes exactly to it. When you build up a grand conspiracy and you're so certain that there is something there, and then you get into that position, you say, actually, there's nothing there, no one's going to believe you. Just in the same way, the Democrats still to this day, despite a Mueller investigation, still believe that Russia was involved with Trump winning the first election.
Yeah, well, they love believing Russia's involved in everything. Might have some credence to some stuff. Obviously, you know, Putin won Brexit for us. Let's never forget that. I'd say with sarcasm. But what is Donald Trump up to now? Sending Department of Justice to interview Ghislaine Maxwell in prison over what information she holds on Epstein. Is this just gimmick? Is this a deflection technique so the public are sort of given something? Or actually, maybe if there's nothing in the files, he wants to get something, anything from Ghislaine in order to feed them some sort of, you know, throw a bone to the wolves or some such?
Well, Trump, I think a little bit overplayed his hand when he was essentially attacking some of the people who were part of the MAGA movement. Many of his base were upset by his words on Truth Social. So this, to me, sounds like a ploy. Hey, just go down there and just come back with something, just so we can act like we are caring enough to try to find and uncover something. But Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted for trafficking for Jeffrey Epstein, not for a client list, not for a whole bunch of conspiracies surrounding it, not for Bill Gates or anybody, for Jeffrey Epstein. Is it possible that Jeffrey Epstein had other friends who were doing stuff with other girls and stuff like that? Yeah, possibly. But what everybody is presuming is that there's this worldwide conspiracy of a client list from, 1,000 people, 1,000 men on it, and they were setting up everyone, and everything was super organized, and that the government has all this information that they're choosing not to act on. And the truth is, it behooves them to release this information. Why wouldn't you want to release this information? And I don't buy that, Trump is linked to him. Everybody knows that Trump knew this guy. He knew everybody. He was a socialite.
He was also one of the first to sort of disown Epstein, though, wasn't he? He sort of had a massive fallout in the early noughties and said, clear off, don't want anything to do with you. And Epstein hated him in the end.
Yeah, quite exactly that. And actually, I was just before I came in here, I saw CNN is showing public videos and photographs of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein together. And that's the part of the problem, is that the Democrats and left-leaning media are trying to use this to softly imply that there's something more there. Maybe MAGA is right. This is a weak moment in political theater, but the Democrats and the left-leaning media are playing off of it. But there's no there when it comes to some sort of deeper conspiracy between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump.
What if, though, the reason some of these files are not being released is because there is something in there that could be very problematic, let's say, for the Trump administration. And it might not be anything to do with him personally or even any of his mates. What if in these files there might have been some sort of foreign leader who's still in position, who Trump's trying to have some sort of important bilateral relationship with, who was getting on the old Lolita Express and getting his fill? Might it be possible that there are things that are sensitive that could be against America's national interest for whatever reason if they were in the public domain?
Is that possible? Absolutely. But my thing is this. Then we start going down the trail of, we have no evidence of any of that. So to presume that, well, maybe it's not Trump, but it's some other person that they're trying to cover for, what we're trying to do is keep the theory alive, is that there's some deeper connection, some deeper theory behind Jeffrey Epstein. And the reality is, as of right now, we have no evidence of anything deeper than what we already know, that Jeffrey Epstein was doing stuff that he shouldn't have been doing with girls. He was prosecuted because of it. He went to jail because of it. Ghislaine Maxwell went to jail because of it. So we don't know. We honestly don't know this. And I think that sometimes we're just trying to keep a theory alive. And we might do that forever, because honestly, I never thought there was going to be any sort of deeper information coming out, even if there is some sort of deeper conspiracy. So, but that's just me.
I mean, maybe it's us, Adam. Maybe it's us, because at the end of the day, it's a blimmin' brilliant story for the media, isn't it? It's clickbait who was in the Epstein files. So maybe it's actually just market forces at work when it comes to news websites who are keeping it alive. And Donald Trump feels like he's stuck responding to it always. But hey-ho, the life of a journalist. Adam, always brilliant having you on the programme. You're a fantastic man. Do join us again soon. Adam Coleman, columnist at the New York Post. Now, we're going to take a little break, but I've got something fun for you after the break, because Mr. Farage of famous Southport video, they're not telling us something. They're not telling us something. Of course, that sort of generated the hashtag Farage riots, and he was blamed for all of the protests. Well, he's just posted a little video on X. But I'm not going to tell you what it is now. You're going to have to wait a few minutes, and I'll see you on the other side.
It's performative politics. They say what they think they need to say, which will become the electorate, and then do absolutely nothing because they feel they've discharged their obligations at that point. We have a government, we have parliamentarians who are nothing more than salesmen. They're not actually purveyors of plans and have the managerial execution capability to deliver those plans.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Having a little secret cough then, but I think I might have done it a little less secretly than intended. Now, I just said before the break, I don't know if you can cast your minds back to Southport and that blimmin' bonehead James O'Brien going, Nigel Farage caused all the riots, and then all of a sudden hashtag Farage riots were trending, as if Nigel was there sitting in some sort of ivory tower instructing everybody to take to the streets. He was not. All that happened was he put out a video saying, we're not being told the truth, are we? And we weren't. He was right. We were not being told the truth. We were being deliberately misled and gaslit and falsely accused of being thugs because it was more convenient that the powers of be concealed the reality of the situation when it came to Axel Ruder-Cabana, his motivations, his terrorism connections. So they did deliberately lie to us, which reminds me of what happened the last weekend, because Peter Blexley sat here and he said to me, in Epping Forest, the Essex police were picking up and transporting protesters from the station, left-wing protesters, agitators, to the heart of the action. And I was like, that is ridiculous, that is frightening. It sort of makes me reflect on what happened after Southport. And I was like, right, I'd need to see some evidence, because you do as a journalist. And then the Essex police put out a statement going, we didn't do that. They categorically said in a press statement, that is not true. Guess what? There's video evidence. And Nigel Farage has got hold of it. Let's look.
Have a look at this video.
If these are locals, why are they getting in a police car? What time's the next bus? You wait 15 minutes for a bus and then 3 come all along at once. Look, they're all cramming in.
This shows Stand Up to Racism, as they're called, with Antifa, a violent, thuggish group, arriving at the train station and literally, by Essex police, being bussed to the Bell Hotel. These were the people that caused the disturbances. These were the people that caused the riots. Essex police caused the disturbances. What on earth were Essex police thinking? Is it that they just hate so much ordinary residents determined to stand up for their own rights? I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is what Essex police have done here is absolutely disgraceful. One of the most extraordinary acts I've seen from the police force in my lifetime. And for bussing Antifa, oh, and by the way, many of them masked protesters, for doing this, heads must roll. There is no way the Chief Constable or the Police and Crime Commissioner in Essex can stay in their posts. This is a disgrace.
Well, 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 let's wait and see what Essex police have to say, because apparently they're calling a press conference to explain themselves at 1:15. What I don't expect them to say is, yeah, go on, we did do that. We did bust them in because we wanted things to kick off in a big way so then we could clamp down on it. And these were the people who told us to do it. And while we're at it, you shouldn't be so surprised, because familiar scenes such as that happened a year ago during the summer riots. They're not going to say that, are they? I'll be interested to see what mealy-mouthed excuse they do give us, how much more gaslighting and lies the authorities can throw at the British people and expect us to suck it up. Dear Nigel, my lovely, lovely friend who I've known for a long time, why don't you go and have a little look at the Socialist Workers' Party? Who funds them? Who's giving them money? Because we know once upon a time, good old Hope Not Hate were on a government payroll. So who is funding Socialist Workers' Party with their placards and their ever-ready crew of short-fringed lunatics who turn up to counter-protest everything? And also, were they there last year when all of a sudden those first fairly normal, relatively civilised protests seemed to be infiltrated by people with balaclavas lobbing things? If that's true, if we start pulling on that thread and we go all the way back to the beginning, what then? What does that mean for all of those people who were convicted, put in the slammer? What does that mean for the lies that came out of Sir Keir Starmer's mouth? What does that mean for the lack of faith we now have in our public institutions, which Angela Rayner herself read out from a wonk in Whitehall, saying that this might be partly to blame for why everything is at tinderbox level right now in the United Kingdom? Get on with it, Nigel. You're doing us all a service. Astonishing. There's the video. I've seen it with my own eyes now. Seeing is believing. I'm going to be waiting around when I finish my shift to see what Essex police have to say. Right, let's talk now about something else that gets me hot under the collar, which is that absolute moron, boneheaded eco-zealot Ed Zero, him of the ukulele in the Wim field, has now decided that he might actually bring in a gas boiler ban by the back door. Let's speak to Harry Wilkinson, Head of Policy of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Harry, I'm about to move into a new house I've just purchased. It's got a gas boiler, as to pretty much every single house in the land, because that's how we've kept the lights on and cooked our dinners for the past Lord knows how many decades. Most of us can't afford heat pumps. What on earth does Ed Zero think he's playing at?
Good afternoon, Alex. Well, this is extraordinary. What we seem to have with Ed Miliband is someone who seems to have the least confidence in his own agenda, even compared to us at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. If you thought that heat pumps were going to save people money, why would you have to ban the alternatives? If you thought heat pumps were going to save people money, why would you have to increase taxes on gas to force people to do this? You know, we are already under what's known as the Clean Heat Market Mechanism, which mandates that a certain percentage of boiler sales have to be heat pumps. And that target will ramp up and ramp up over the years until you can't buy gas boilers anymore. This is a very mandatory approach. It's a strict approach. It's a rigid approach that doesn't allow people to choose the products that they want to buy. And we see this in other areas. We see a similar policy for electric vehicles, which again, Ed Miliband promises that they will save people money. If they will save people money, why won't he just let people choose what they want to buy? Ed Miliband has one job, it's to get the cost of electricity down. You know, if he did this, our economy would be thriving and he wouldn't need to bribe people to get these things because people would choose to do them because they would be cheap to run anyway. But he's trying to interfere in every sector of the economy. Now, you know, certain people have want to promote hydrogen boilers instead. You know, I've looked at the economics of that. They look even worse at the moment. But what we should have is people still having the option to get gas boilers if they remain cheaper. Consumers just need to be allowed to do what they want. This is perhaps the most regressive agenda. I can't think of a single green policy that's not regressive because it's wealthy people who can afford heat pumps and the poorer people who will not be able to afford to get a heat pump for the time being will be stuck with these new taxes that Ed Miliband is planning to levy on people who use gas. So, you know, please, Ed Miliband, focus on doing your job and getting the cost of electricity down.
Oh, please, Ed Miliband, don't focus on doing your job. Please disappear, because it seems to me he's the most dangerous man in Britain, because at the crux of all of our economic failure is energy bills. You know, when Rachel is, oh, look, you know, the interest we have to pay on our debt is more than we expected. Oh, because of inflation. I'm like, that might be because you're taxing employment. And it also might be because your little mate Ed over there has decided to carry on pushing for crazy net zero targets, which means businesses can't operate, which means hospitals pay as high as energy bills as we do in our homes, which means the cost of food on the shelves is more because it needs to be transported and refrigerated. I mean, if you could actually bring down energy costs by, I don't know, binning the net zero agenda, the whole of the economic crisis could potentially start to be unravelled.
Indeed, and we have a very dangerous moment coming up very soon, which is what's known as the AR7, Allocation Round 7, where Ed Miliband is about to sign 20-year contracts. He increased that from 15 years to 20 years, 20-year contracts for offshore wind. That means he's going to lock in potentially higher prices for 20 years to come with the British public. And this is a technology that actually needs a lot of backup. It needs a lot of grid upgrades. So he is locking in more expensive energy for the foreseeable future. This is very dangerous. And Ed Miliband urgently needs to reconsider these plans and actually put forward proposals that will introduce competition and stop it from being the case that the government is picking winners and just trying to predict the future, and allowing markets and competition and consumer choice to bring down prices for people. He needs to read some basic economics textbooks and he would understand that his agenda is particularly misguided.
Maybe you should go on a little school trip to Spain as well, because one thing I learned about renewables, which I didn't know before when Spain had their blackouts, is because renewables are so random, because they're weather dependent, and we've got the most random weather in all of Europe, probably in the United Kingdom, or tiny little island under a jet stream. Because it's so random, it means the grid is constantly being either bombarded with a load of power or lacking it. And then when that happens, it can make the entire grid collapse.
One of the things that renewables doesn't have, which big rotating turbines that you find in nuclear, gas, coal power stations do have, is that provision of inertia. And inertia is really important in grids because it provides a system that isn't going to flip off when you have fluctuations in energy supply, as we see with renewables. So what we saw in Spain, and what seems to likely have been the case, was that, perhaps a changing weather, a cloud system came in front, and the grid was not able to cope with that because there wasn't enough inertia in the system. So an extra cost that you have when you try and rely on renewables is you have to generate that synthetic inertia by creating rotating turbines that just provide that oomph to the system to push the power around to where it's needed. So, this is another example of a risk that Britain is facing when we're trying to rely on renewables even more. So, the whole system is failing. Energy prices are rising and rising. We were promised reductions in our energy bills, but they've just been rising and rising. And this is going to the heart of Britain's productivity declines.
Oh, and you wonder why the Cabinet is saying we're about to head towards disaster because of deindustrialisation, lack of trust in public institutions, etc., etc. Because of you! Oh, Harry, thank you ever so much for giving us some more detail and information on yet another wacky Ed Zero policy. Snuck out, of course, during parliamentary recess. He thinks people like us won't notice that there's no parliamentary scrutiny. We know what's going on, Ed Zero. This is what governments always do. They always try and make sure that they get the bad news out when they think we're not paying attention. But don't you worry, we're at Talk always paying attention. We've got our beady little eyes on their game, and don't you worry either, because we're going to be bloodhounds chasing down whatever on earth has been going on with Essex and the supposed busing of counter-protesters right to the heart of the action in Epping Forest. What on earth was their intention? We need answers, and we need answers ASAP. And there is, of course, a big press conference coming up with the Essex Police at 1:15, and I'm pleased to say you're going to be in the very capable hands of Mr. Jonathan Goulis to tell you what's been going on in that press conference. I mean, this is an extraordinary story, isn't it?
Well, it's yet again Nigel Farage setting the tone for the week. At the beginning of the week on Monday, he's telling us that we're living in a lawless society and that there is civil unrest on the brink for many parts of the country. Classic sneering, that's stoking division, stoking fear. Then we find out 24 hours later that Angela Rayner is literally saying word for word in Cabinet what Nigel Farage has been saying. And then, like you say, then we find out that police have literally lied to the public and have escorted Antifa-type divisive protesters who are there to stoke anger and try and have some sort of violence, to try and claim we're the good guys. It's always those who protest are the bad guys. It's just so dull.
It makes you have to ask very serious questions